Hello and welcome to this complete course in business telling. Let's see what you will learn through this course. Number 1, effective business mindset. You will learn how to unleash the full power of your ideas. Number 2, marketing fundamentals, where you will learn to turn your ideas into results through actionable stories. And last but not least, the secret behind business storytelling, where you will learn how to maximize your business storytelling potential. Today, we have some breaking news to share. The world is calling. All around the world, audiences, ideas, business are looking for story creators, storytellers, and story lovers. Let me run a quick check with you. Please raise your hand if you have ever experienced to create or tell a story, to run a business, to start a new project, to motivate a group of people, or just to share some information. And now please raise your hand if you have ever experienced to hear a great story and to say, wow, I would have loved to have a story like that one, or to say, what a great storyteller. I'm sure you raise your hand at least once, because all of us are somehow story creators, storytellers, and story lovers. The world is calling, and it's time to answer. It's time to learn business telling. Now, think for a second what we do through stories. We learn while doing something, while reading, while studying, while working. We always learn new things. We share usually what we learn, and we grow, both from a personal and a professional point of view. So we can definitely say we are our stories. Students, startups, professionals, brands, organizations, think about. We all have one thing in common. Our stories have made us who we are today. Let's look for a second at the definition of story by the Cambridge English Dictionary. A story is a description, either true or imagined, of a connected series of facts or events which is written or told in order to inform or entertain an audience. So every time we collect data, information, facts, content, and we put them together in a framework to inform or entertain an audience, we are creating a story. So whoever we are, whatever our idea, our business, our product, our service, even our story looks like, we are our stories. And because we are our stories, we are in control to improve the quality of the story we create and we share. Through this course, you will learn proven, effective, and easy to use methodologies to improve the quality and the actionability of your stories. And this brings us to the end of the first section, where we cover the introduction and the foundation of business telling. We are our stories. In the next session, we're going to deep dive on how improving the quality of our stories will improve the quality of our results. So see you in the next session. Welcome back to this complete course in business telling. In the first section, we introduced the foundational concept of business telling. We are our stories. In the second section, better stories equal better result, we're going to dive more in details into how the quality of our stories will have a direct impact on the quality of our results. Let me start with a question. Which are for you the most relevant drivers to deliver results? Let's look at it together. First one, the quality of the people. Yourself, first of all, and the people working with you. As we said in the first section, to unleash the full power of ideas, you need to have the people with the right mindset. And through this course, you're going to discover effective tools to create that successful mindset. And the second element, the quality of the stories. Now, we're going to deep dive much more in detail into that. But keep in mind for now that to master and to deliver effective stories, you need to know your market, your audience, and of course, the purpose of your story. Sometimes it happens we don't get what we want or what we were looking for. Most of the time, this is because we keep telling ourselves, first of all, the wrong story or a story not good enough. Because at the end of the day, our results depend on our stories. So, to improve our results, we must improve both our stories and our capability of creating and telling them. Let's have a look at a couple of examples of how successful story creator and storyteller build their stories. Brands are a great example of creating and telling stories. This is, for example, the visual map created by Interbrand of the best 100 brands ranked by their values. We can call them successful brands. Everybody knows them. Now, what do they have in common? They create and tell successful stories. It's interesting to see the same map in 2001 and then in 2019. So the total value in 2001 was a bit less than $1 trillion. In 2019 is 2.1 trillion, so more than double in 2 decades. And then if you deep dive a bit more on the different logos, you can see that some of the big brands 2001, they are much smaller in 2019 and the other way around. Let's have a look at a couple of examples. Apple, they moved from a pretty small size in 2001 to the biggest value brand in the world in 2019. Amazon, similar story. It was slightly smaller than Apple and is the third biggest one in 2019 after Apple and Google. And then we have other example that went on the opposite way. Ford in the automotive industry. He moved from a pretty big size in 2001 in terms of value of his brand to a much smaller in 2019. Even more shocking, some brands like Nokia, that was one of the leaders in 2001, completely disappeared in 2019. So the question is, what is impacting these results? We have seen in the previous slides that people and stories play a major role into deliver results. Let's take a couple of examples, I would say, of the two most successful brands of 2019, Apple and Google, and let's try to understand why their story is so successful, how those stories enable them to create a brand that is so big in terms of value. Let's start with Apple, the number one in the Interbrand ranking, with its 234 billion US dollar evaluation. And the second brand is going to be Google, second in the Interbrand evaluation with 167 billion US dollar. For Apple, we're going to take a look at the iPad Pro 2020 TV commercial. While for Google, we're going to look at the Loretta TV commercial aired at the Super Bowl in 2020. So I'm going to kindly ask you to put on pause this lesson, to look at the YouTube links you can find here below on the text below this video. Click on them, watch the videos, and then come back. Thank you. Thanks for watching and welcome back. Let's start with the Apple new iPad Pro 2020. The commercial is all about music and colors, and the perfect combination to create engagement and excitement on their audience. Then the precision. If you remember, the bird is flying back and forth in front of the computer, and the screen is moving accordingly. The innovation is bringing into the market a completely new iPad with a new technology and new sensors. And actually, the final claim is underlying the power of this innovation. Your next computer is not a computer. And then we have the Google Loretta at the Super Bowl commercial 2020. The focus on emotions. I'm sure that some of you got emotional watching this commercial. The usability. Google can be used by anyone at any age to find whatever they are looking for. And the voice control. So again, the innovation that this brand is bringing to the market to deliver on the brand promise. And the final claim, very powerful, how not to forget. These are two examples of very powerful stories that create engagement and they are able to activate their audience. So why are these stories successful? And the answer is action. In other words, they call successfully their audience to action. Apple and a mix of color, music, precision, innovation to tell you that your next computer is not a computer. And on the other side, Google with a mix of emotions, usability, and voice control to share the message how not to forget. So in both cases, we can see clear example of brands that talk with the right language and the right tone of voice, the right audience to call them to action. So if action is the reason why successful brands tell successful stories, the question is, how can I maximize the effectiveness of a call to action? And the answer is, first, you need to talk to the right audience. Of course, before talking to the right audience, you need to know your audience. We're going to share with you very powerful tools to do this action. Number two, you need to use the right language, especially to describe your value proposition and the reason why you exist. And in this course, you're going to find all proven effective methodologies to make your language as effective as never before. And last but not least, having a clear end in mind. You need to know the end of your journey. You need to know what's your goal. During this complete course in business telling, we're going to widely cover all these three steps. We're going to provide you all the necessary tools to optimize your call to action. Let me open this lesson with a question. Does your story successfully call your audience to action? We asked this question to 100 people globally. Can you guess the answer? Let me share with you. Only 23 said yes. 77 out of these 100 people said no. They believe their story is not calling their audience to action successfully. So we have seen in the previous lessons how important it is to have a story that activates your audience. 77 said no, is a quite high percentage. So out of those 77, we asked, are you taking action to improve it? 37 replied, for the time being is okay. This means they didn't feel any pressure to increase and to maximize the call to action of the story. 22 answered, I will look at it after this period. 11 said, I have other priorities. And only 7 answered, it's definitely time to improve it. This means only 9% of the people felt the pressure to improve the capability to call their audience to action and to activate in the best way. In the last 2 years, we interview our clients among startups, professionals, and organizations to measure the impact of calling the audience to action more effectively. Among startups, 72% increased their fundraising performance. And among professionals, 82% increased sales, clients, or profitability per client. And among organizations, 78% increase ROI effectiveness and customer satisfaction. These are the proof that when you increase the quality of your call to action, you increase your result. So, whoever you are and whatever your story looks like, better stories drive more action, and more action deliver better results. So, better stories equal better results. And now, to complete this second section, let's look at the key takeaways. First takeaway, successful brands tell successful stories. We have seen a couple of examples, Apple and Google. Fewer than 10% of companies take immediate action. And last one, better stories means more action, and more action deliver better results. So increase the quality of your stories and you will increase the quality of your results. In the second section, we have covered how better stories drive more action, and how more action deliver better results. It's time now to better understand why learn business telling and why learning business telling will step change the quality of your story and ultimately the quality of your results. See you in the next session. Hello, and welcome back to this complete course in business telling. In the first two sections, we talk about the foundational concept, we are our stories, and how the quality and the actionability of your stories have a direct impact in the quality of your results. In this third section, why learn business telling, we will talk about why business telling is the right methodology to activate your audience successfully. Now, in business, stories are effective when they drive results, and results come from taking action. So the goal of any business story is to activate the audience to take action. Business stories are not only there to entertain an audience or interest an audience, they are there to activate the audience to take the action the brand or the storyteller is looking for. So better stories mean stories that activate an audience more effectively. In business telling, we name them actionable stories. I'm sure you remember this chart from the previous section representing the 2019 Best 100 Global Brands by Interbrand. We were saying how successful brands create and tell successful stories. So we can now conclude a successful brand create and tell actionable stories. Let's look at some of those successful brands that create and tell actionable stories. We decided to focus on the 2007 mobile phone market, and precisely on the AMJ April, May, June time period. At that time, there were three major players and a newcomer. The three major players were Nokia, Samsung, and BlackBerry. And the newcomer, guess, was Apple. So Nokia had 36% in terms of volume share and 57% in terms of value share. Samsung, 14% in terms of volume share and 11% in terms of value. And finally, BlackBerry, with 1% in terms of volume share and 5% in terms of value share. And for that period of time, April, May, June, Apple had 0% volume share and 0% value share. For the one not familiar with the concept of volume share and value share, let's explain it very quickly. So let's make an assumption that the market out there has 100 phones. Looking at this percentage, it means that Nokia would own 36%, 36 of those phones. Samsung 14, and BlackBerry only 1. Apple 0, because as we said, is a newcomer. Now, if the average price of each phone is 10 euros, 100 phones times 10 euros, it would be 1,000 euros. Means the total value of the market is 1,000 euros. Now, looking at percentages, Nokia has 57%. So it would mean that Nokia would have 57% of these 1,000 euros. Samsung 11%, BlackBerry 5%, and again Apple 0% because it's a newcomer. So if your volume share is lower than your value share, it means you're selling your product at a premium price, higher than the average price of the market. That's the example of Nokia and of BlackBerry. Where your volume share is higher than the value share, it means you're selling at a lower price than the average, as the example of Samsung. Those four brands together, actually we should say the first three altogether, they had at that time 51% in terms of volume share and around 73% in terms of value share. So we could say that they were pretty predominant in the market in 2007. Now, on that period of time, all those four brands, they were launching a new mobile phone. Nokia, the Nokia N82, launched in June 2007. Samsung, with the E700, launched in March 2007. BlackBerry, with the Curve 8310 in April 2007. And finally, Apple with the iPhone 1 in June 2007. So as you can see, they were launching in the same time window. A little bit earlier Samsung, but we can consider April, May, June representative for all those four brands to make a comparison on the business story they used to launch those new products. So here below, you can find the 4 YouTube links to the commercial that each brand have used. So I would ask you to pause this lesson, to watch the YouTube videos, and then to come back so we can analyze the commercials together. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed those videos. Let's start with Nokia. The story focuses on the storytelling around the uniqueness of the new Nokia N82. No info about the product, just example of how user will feel. And the claim? Discover, capture, share. Let's have a look at Samsung. The story is all about the model Estrella Warren and the usage of the new Samsung Mobile to take self-portrait and multi-shot. Do you remember the claim? Shoot what you love. The BlackBerry one. The story focuses on the intelligence of the new BlackBerry, with some technical data shared and the beauty of the design. And the claim? The intelligence you require and the beauty you desire. And finally, Apple. The story is all about phones and how phones, though changing over the years, have always been used by humans to connect. The new coming iPhone will be future-ready phone to keep connecting. And the claim? Just a simple hello. Now, I'm sure you have a favorite one, as much as I have mine, and I will share it later during this course. But the most important aspect we want to look at is the result that those stories have been able to deliver. Let's have a look. In the column here, you can find our 4 brands. And in the row, you can find the 2 time windows, 2007, Q2, and 2010, Q4. Q stands for quarter. Calendar year can be divided in 4 quarters. Each quarter is, of course, 3 months long. So Q1 would be January, February, March. Q2 is April, May, June, as we've seen in the previous chart. Q3 would be July, August, September. And Q4 would be October, November, December. So in this table, we're going to compare the performance at Q2 versus the performance that we'll have in Q4 2010 and the trend for each brand. Now, the result we're going to look at, they're not driven only by the new product launch and the TV commercial or the stories behind this new product launch, except for iPhone that was launching its first mobile phone. But anyway, it's a good representation on how the different business stories for each brand have impacted the result from 2007 to 2010. Let's look now at their performances using this chart created by Asimco, a mobile expert consulting company, named Squeezed by Apple, so you can guess which brand won this comparison. But let's look more in detail how the story went. So you have the top 8 brands at that time leading the market: Apple, Nokia, Samsung, RIM, Research in Motion is BlackBerry, HTC, Sony Ericsson, Motorola, LG, and then others. So the top 8 mobile producers were dominating the market. And here on the first chart, you can see the volume share split. So Nokia, the first one, moved from 36% in 2007 down to 32% in 2010. Then let's look at Samsung. Samsung moved up from 14% to 21%. Quite significant jump, 7-point percentage. BlackBerry quadrupled its volume share, so great jump from 1% to 4%. And then we have Apple, that moved from not existing to an impressive 5% in terms of volume. And what about the value? The value share, same time window. Let's start from Nokia. They went from 57%, definitely market leader, to a 15%. So they lost 42-point percentage in a bit more than 3 years. Let's look at Samsung. They went up from 11% to 14%. BlackBerry from 5% to 12%, another big jump, and quite stunning performance from Apple, from not existing to a 51% of the value share of the mobile phone market at the end of 2010. As you can imagine, there would be a lot of things to say looking at this chart and those numbers, but we want to focus on 3 key takeaways: premiumness, audience, and stories. Let's start with premiumness. If we look at 2007, Nokia was a premium price mobile phone producer and seller with a value share higher than volume share. Now, if we look at 3 years later, we had Apple, by far the most premium brand, BlackBerry in the second place, and then Samsung, that was pretty stable on not being the most premium brand since 2007 to 2010, and Nokia then moved from the first place to the 4th place. They lost premiumness, while Apple became the king in terms of premium price mobile devices in the market. Second takeaway, audience. Let's look at the 4 brands. Samsung had more or less the same level of premiumness from 2007 to 2010, so they were talking pretty much to the same audience. BlackBerry, very similar story, and focusing on the business segment of the market. Apple, jumping from not existing to becoming the most premium brand, so they were somehow owning the communication and the activation to the premium price audience. What about Nokia? Nokia in 3 years completely changed the audience they were talking to. So in 2007, being a premium product, they want to activate their audience with premium price devices. In 2010, the situation was completely upside down. They have to activate their audience with a totally different device, an entry price point device. And the third takeaway, stories. Stories represent somehow the link between premiumness or value proposition and audience. So let's look at the stories of those 4 brands. Do you remember their TV commercials? Let's start with Samsung. The TV commercial was all about the functionality of its product, focusing on self-portraits and multi-shots. Do you remember the claim? Shoot what you love. And actually, their business offer is pretty functional. They have a price that is lower than the average price of the market, and they create a story that is bringing to life this point of difference to activate the audience in the right way. Then we have BlackBerry. Similar story to Samsung, but different audience. Their story was about premiumness, power, and they were talking to a business segment of the audience. The claim was about the intelligence you require and the beauty you desire. So very premium value proposition, premium tone of voice and language of the story to activate audience they are interested on. Then Apple. Apple was not existing before Q2 2007 when they launched the first iPhone. They had a clear end in mind. They wanted to create a premium product. They wanted to talk with the right language and the right tone of voice to the right audience to own the premium price segment of the market. And they did it. How they did it? With the most important word when you handle a communication via phone. Hello. They made a very simple, straightforward, and engaging TV commercial. And the result, you can see in this chart. They activate their audience in the most effective way. And now Nokia. Do you remember their TV commercial? It was all about how users feel when they own the new Nokia N82. So it was about the premiumness of that device through a premium communication to activate that part of the audience that were interested on that value proposition. But unfortunately, in Q2 2007, a newcomer, Apple, launched the most premium product in the market, the first iPhone. So that part of the audience interested in the premium value proposition shift from Nokia to Apple. All of a sudden, Nokia had to focus on a more functional part of the audience. But it looks like, looking at the trends and the performance from 2007 to 2010, their business stories, they were not able to activate that part of the audience as effectively as they were doing before when they had the premiumness in the hand. So this shows how important it is to have an actionable story that activates the audience to take the action you are looking for. Let's keep in mind the 3 key takeaways. Number 1, value proposition. In this case, it was all about the premiumness of the different devices. Number 2, audience. Who is the audience you're talking to? What are they looking for? And number 3, stories. When we're able to combine these 3 elements together in a very effective way, we're going to be able to move from storytelling that is all about engage your audience to business telling that is all about activate your audience. During the last lesson, we have seen 4 TV commercials by 4 successful brands that were launching their brand new mobile devices. And looking at the result, we have seen how some of them were more successful than the others. So the question is, what makes a story not actionable? And the answer is complexity. So what does complexity mean? Let me answer with 3 examples. The first one, too many options. If you look in the 90s, the average number of laundry products in a supermarket was 10. Have you ever checked today? Today is 60. So we're talking about 6 times more in 30 years. Too many options. Second example, too many messages. The more messages you try and communicate, the lower the likelihood of communicating any single message. If we look at the research run by Millward Brown using Link, their measurement platform, they were able to determine how well ads featuring multiple messages manage to get any single message through the consumer. If we look at the first example, one message, the likelihood is 100%. Even by adding a second message to an ad, the likelihood that consumer will get both messages drops from 100% of a single message to 65%. Then ramping up to 4 messages, the likelihood of any single message to get through consumers dropped to 43%. Too many messages. And a third example, too many stories. For this example, I would like to quote Ryan Holmes, CEO at Hootsuite. Hootsuite is a social media management platform. He said, back in the 70s, the average consumer in the US saw around 500 ads per day. Today, that number has increased by a factor of 10 to upward of 5,000 ads per day. So we are talking about 10 times more in 50 years. Too many stories. So when we try to communicate too many options and or too many messages and or too many stories, we create complexity. And as Tony Robbins, a very famous leadership coach, says, complexity is the enemy of execution. In business telling, we like to say complexity is the enemy of action, because creating complexity will make our audience feel lost. When they will have too many options, too many messages, or too many stories, it's going to be much harder for them to take action and to be activated to take the action we are looking for. In the previous lessons, we have seen how actionable stories drives better results. And in the previous chart, we have seen how complexity is the enemy of action. So, minimize complexity will increase the quality of your results, because minimize complexity will drive more action, and more action delivers better results. So, through business telling, you will learn how to maximize your business storytelling potential or your capability to tell actionable stories that will activate your audience to take the action you are looking for. You will learn how to minimize complexity. We have seen how complexity is the enemy of action. You will learn how to drive action and, of course, how to deliver results. In this third section, we cover why learn business telling. Let's look together at the 3 takeaways. First one, too many equal complexity. You remember the 3 examples, right? Too many options, too many messages, too many stories drive complexity. And what we know about complexity? Complexity is the enemy of action. So we have seen together the 4 reasons to learn business telling that are maximize your business storytelling potential, minimize complexity, drive action, and deliver results. Well done. You have completed the third section, why learn business telling. I hope now you have more clarity on why this complete course could be very beneficial to design and to share your actionable stories with the aim to turn your ideas into results. The next section is going to be what is business telling. So, see you there. Hello, and welcome back to this complete course in business telling. In the first 3 sections, we have covered we are our stories, better stories equal better results, why learn business telling, and now in the 4th section, we're going to answer the question, what is business telling? Have you ever had the feeling that you could have achieved better results if only your story would be more effective at bringing your idea to life or calling your audience to action? If this question is relevant to you, business telling is the answer. Business telling is the proven, effective, and easy to use business storytelling methodology to turn ideas into results through actionable stories. Business telling is composed of 4 elements: idea, story, action, and of course, result. In this course, we're going to see how to play with idea and story to create the right action to deliver the results you are looking for. At Business Telling, we merge best class experiences in startups with projects in pitch deck reviews, business planning and scaling up, global brands with brand strategy, marketing activation, and effective communication activities, and of course, academic research with research run in consumer behavior, online trust, and knowledge management. Since 2015, startups, professionals and organizations have been successfully using business telling in their fundraising processes, with more than 5 million raised by pitch decks optimized with business telling. In consulting, with more than 200 business ideas turned into results across different industries. And of course in training, with more than 3,000 students who attended so far the online and offline training. We are of course very proud of the results so far, but now it's time to create and tell your actionable story, to turn your ideas into results. In other words, it's time to take action. We like to quote Simon Sinek, a famous American business author, who says, "Words may inspire, but only action creates change." And with this quote by Simon Sinek, we arrive at the end of this fourth section that was all about answer the question, what is business telling? Let's look at the key takeaways. The first one, the purpose. Why business telling exists? To turn ideas into results through actionable stories. The value proposition, what it's all about, is a proven, effective, and easy-to-use methodology to deliver on that purpose. And of course, this methodology has been developed with experience in startups, global brands, and academic research. So now that you know what business telling is, it's time to look at how business telling works. See you in the next section. Hello, and welcome back to this complete course in business telling. In the first 4 sections, we have covered we are our stories, better stories equal better results, why learn business telling, and we answer the question, what is business telling? In the 5th section, we're going to cover now how business telling works. Are you ready to take action? Let's go back for a second to the definition of business telling. Business telling is the proven, effective, and easy-to-use business storytelling methodology to turn ideas into results through actionable stories. As we've seen in the previous section, business telling is composed by 4 elements: idea, story, action, and results. The methodology we're going to use to turn ideas into results is called path to result, and the path to result is composed by 4 steps. The first one, maximize business storytelling potential. The second one, minimize complexity. The third one, drive action. And the fourth one, deliver result. We're going to look at all of them now, and we're going to deep dive in each of them to understand how it works and why it's relevant to deliver your result. Let's start with the first one, maximize business storytelling potential. Consider the idea and the story on the 2 axes. The business storytelling potential is nothing else than the combination of the power of idea and the actionability of the story. If an idea is very powerful and is brought to life through a very actionable story, the business storytelling potential is at its highest. Then, of course, the lower the power of the idea and the lower the quality or the actionability of the story, the lower the business storytelling potential. So we could conclude that better ideas and better stories create bigger business storytelling potential. During this section and the next one, we're going to show you effective tools to maximize your business storytelling potential. Step 2, minimize complexity. If we look at the business storytelling potential that we define as step 1 as the combination between the idea and the story, complexity decreases the power of an idea and the actionability of a story. So the more complexity, both for ideas and for stories, and the smaller the business storytelling potential. Because never forget, complexity is the enemy of action. Step 3, drive action. So we have the business storytelling potential, we have seen as step 1, and the negative influence of complexity on minimize the business storytelling potential. Now, the purpose of business telling is to activate your audience in the most effective way. So the ability to call an audience to action is determined by the size of the business storytelling potential. The red arrow is the action that your audience will take at the end of your actionable story. The bigger the arrow, the bigger the likelihood to activate your audience in the most effective way. And step 4, deliver results. If we take back the business storytelling potential concept that we explained as step 1, then we minimize complexity as presented in step 2. We have the action. So once the story ends, the audience should be inspired to take action, as we said in step 3. This intent and subsequent action will fade over time. So the results are equal to the sum of all the action taken by the audience once the story ends. So we have the idea, and we are going to see later during this course how to maximize the potential of the idea. We have the story that we use to bring the idea to life and to activate the audience to take the action we are looking for. And we have the results that are equal to the sum of all the action taken by the audience once the story ends. As we've seen in the previous lesson, the path to result is composed by 4 key elements: idea, story, action, and results. Some of you may have seen that the square around idea and story has changed color. It was black before, now it's red. We're going to explain in few seconds why it did happen. To deliver a successful path to result, we have 2 key elements, idea and story, that are what we say the area of control. The other 2 are what we call area of influence. So what do we exactly mean as area of control? Think for a second. Both for idea and for story, we are completely in control of all the elements we want to play with, from the definition of the idea, to identify the value proposition, to the audience we want to talk to create and tell an actionable story. So for those 2 elements, we are completely in control of the final outcome. On the other side, we have the area of influence. What does it mean? For these 2 elements, action and result, we don't have direct control. So the better we create our idea and our story, better we maximize our business storytelling potential, we minimize complexity, then we're going to be able to drive action and to deliver results. Now, make a guess on which of the 2 areas we should start focusing on to deliver a successful path to result. Area of control or area of influence? And of course, is area of control. Is in the name itself, control. We want to focus on the asset we can control, so idea and story, and try to influence action and result. So, which type of action shall we take to focus on the area of control? The first one, we want to unleash the power of ideas. We want to move from the base idea to a powerful idea. That's the color coding that we used. So the base idea is the black color, and then the red box around the word idea is when we unleash the full potential of the idea. And create actionable stories, the same color coding, from an engaging story to an actionable story. So moving from engage your audience to activate your audience. So why do you think it's so important to focus both on stories and on ideas? Do you remember the first step of the path to result? Maximize business storytelling potential. The most effective way to maximize it is to create better ideas, unleash their full power, and better stories, driving action. Let's start deep diving into these 2 concepts, starting from unleash the power of ideas. So think for a second. When we have an idea or a project and we try to frame it, what do we usually do? Well, quite often we act like this, starting with what the idea is about, getting overly detailed too soon on how it works, and superficially quoting only at the end why the idea exists. If we want to put these steps in a circle, we're going to see what in the center, how is the second step, and why is only at the end. We call that start with what idea. And we color coding in black because, as you can guess, this is not effective in unleashing the power of the idea. And you know why? Because when we start with what, usually we share too many options, too many messages, too many stories. And in business telling, too many equal complexity. So the question now is, how can we minimize complexity? That was, if you remember, step number 2 in the path to result. To minimize complexity, we should move from start with what idea to start with why idea. What does it mean? We should put the why in the center, so starting with that, then focusing on the how to bring the why to life, and only at the end, what the idea or the project is about. This is also called the golden circle. You can find it in the Start With Why, a very famous business book by Simon Sinek. So why? To minimize complexity, start with why idea works much better than start with what idea. Do you remember how we define complexity in business telling? Complexity was too many options, too many messages, too many stories. So in other words, the too many problem drives complexity. Now, for any idea, any project, there is always only one why the idea started or the project started. Why there could be many more hows the project or the idea coming to life, and many more what the idea is focusing on and the project is working on. So when you start with why, you minimize the likelihood of focusing on too many options, too many messages, too many stories, or you minimize the likelihood to drive complexity. So starting with the why idea is much more effective in unleashing the power of ideas. So let's analyze how to frame a start with why idea. If you look at the golden circle, in the middle we find the why. So let's start from there. The why is composed by the purpose. Why does your idea, brand, or project exist? Let's make an example. We have seen the Apple iPhone commercial. What would be the brand purpose behind Apple? Apple exists to challenge the status quo or to think differently. So to look from a different perspective at existing solutions and try to find better ones. Step number 2 on the why, the insight behind your idea, your brand, or your project. So the insight is composed by 3 steps. The first one, the user truth, a resonating fundamental human truth. In case of the iPhone, any user would say, I would love to have on my device as many functionalities as possible, to be able to access internet, to play, to make phone calls, to send messages. So to have a multi-platform device that enables me to do a lot of tasks. But unfortunately, the user truth is not always so easy to be achieved. So then we go to step number 2, the tension, a requirement to improve an existing situation. Think for a second at the mobile devices in 2007. Yes, of course, I would love to have a device where I can play a lot of activities. But if you look at the market in that moment, the situation was I have a keyboard to type my words, I have a limited screen, I have limited capacity to interconnect with other devices and to the web. So the truth was there. But the tension is that the capabilities of each device was pretty limited and narrow in what they were already designed for. So we go to step number 3, the need, a desire for a specific product, benefit, or piece of content. In the example of the 2007 mobile devices, the need would be to have a device that can gather together the different capabilities of every single other device to enable me to a different level of interconnection, communication, and playability. And guess what? From that specific need, the iPhone 1 was born. So when you want to frame your idea, make sure you start always with why. And more precisely, you start defining the purpose behind your idea, brand, or project, and the insight with their user truth, the tension, and the need. Because sharing your why first will help you to engage and activate your audience. The why is much more powerful and less price sensitive than the how and the what. What do we mean with that? Think for a second at the iPhone. If I would share with you that I'm creating a new phone, so focusing on the what is my deliverable, then probably you would compare the phone I'm talking about with your existing phone landscape. So you would ask me price, capacity of the memory, etc. While starting with why, I focus on something that is not so easily comparable. If my why or the why behind my idea resonate with you, then of course the level of engagement and the level of activation that you as an audience will have is much different than starting from what I do. And even more powerful, starting with why will make you be part of the idea I'm talking about. And that's the reason why you will ask less questions about pricing, capacity, performances, to be able to compare my product with another. Because, as we said in the previous chart, the why is only one, while the what could be multiple. If I make you part of my why, if I make you understand the why behind my idea, my proposition will be much less price sensitive than the one focusing on the what. So let's have a look at the real example of framing an idea starting with the why. Let's take business telling, the course you're taking. So why does business telling exist? Purpose. Business telling exists to turn ideas into results through actionable stories. Insight. Let's start from the user truth, what usually our users say. I strongly believe in my idea and in my project. I'm sure it will deliver great value and result for all users and stakeholders. But there is always a tension behind that. And in this case, they say, I have so many benefits to share that I don't really know where to start from and how to structure my story so that it calls my audience to action and drives the result effectively. I tried to apply some storytelling, but it didn't really make an impact. And then finally, the need. They say, I need a simple, flexible, and effective framework to call my audience to action. From this insight, we created business telling. So now it's your turn to take action. I would kindly ask you to pause this video on this chart and start working on the why behind your idea, your brand, or your project. In case you don't have one yet, you can take any brand you like and try to identify the purpose and the insight, splitting among user truth, tension, and need. Take all the time you need to identify the why clearly and precisely, because as you can see on the golden circle, the why is the center, is the foundation to unleash the power of ideas. Let's look now at the how. How is the way you bring your why to life. The how is composed by two steps. The first one, markers, or idea, brand, or project signature. The way you can somehow recognize that idea belongs to you or to your brand. Inside markers, we then identify POD and USP of the idea or the offer. So what does POD stand for? POD stands for point of difference and represent all the elements that make your idea or your offer different than the competitors. In the case of the mobile phones that we've seen previously, Apple iPhone had a bigger screen, an adaptive keyboards that was changing based on the different apps, and few other elements that make that offer different than the others. The USP is the unique selling point, is the element that you really believe will stand out versus the competition and will be the element that the audience will remember. So first step, to define the markers, identify the point of difference and the unique selling point of your idea or your offer. Second element, to define markers, the visual DNA, or in other words, the color, the font, the visual you're going to use to bring to life your idea. And the third element, the brand markers. This is valid when you already have a brand existing behind your idea or your offer. So let's make an example. Apple defining and designing the new iPhone. Of course, the how they would bring that idea to life is linked to the brand equity and the brand markers of the Apple brand. So to define your markers, you need to focus on your point of difference, a unique selling point of the idea or the offer, the visual DNA, so all the visual asset that you want to use, and the brand markers in case there is already an existing brand behind your idea or your offer. And then the second step to frame your how is the character. So what if your idea, brand, or project was a human being? So the first step we recommend is to look at your brand archetype. So regardless if you already have an existing brand, to humanize your idea or your brand or your project, take this brand personality quiz that is going to give you as an outcome which one of the 12 brand archetypes identified by Margaret Mark is the closest one to what you feel is the right personality of your idea, your brand, or your project. Now, if you want to know more about the brand archetype word, we put some links and some reference in the notes below this video, so you can have a look and try to understand how they could be relevant to identify the character when you work on your how. And then step number 2. If your idea, your brand, or your project was a human, how would it think, feel, and play? So for a second, humanize it. Try to see how it acts, how it feels, how it moves around. So we can jump on step 3, friends and enemies. If he was human, which kind of friends would he have? And enemies? Following these 3 simple steps, you will become much more effective on defining the character behind your idea. In the process of framing your start with why idea, how plays a key role, because the how must focus on why your idea is relevant and how your idea stands out versus competition. As we've done for the why, let's have a look now at the process of creating the how. For business telling, what's the how to bring business telling to life? Let's start with the markers. We focus on action, the path to results, and some other tools to be discovered. Then the white, black, and red color coding combination, where red highlights where the focus and the actionability should go. And then the character. Let's start with the brand archetype, the magician. The magician seeks out the fundamental laws of science to understand how to influence people and transform visions into reality. Magicians dream bigger, change our perspective, and transform the world. We believe the magician is a good representation of the character of business telling. And if it was a human being, business telling would think, feel, and play like being inspiring, reliable, dynamic, and definitely focus on deliver action. And what about friends? Definitely entrepreneurs, innovators, and brand builder. And enemies? All the people who don't believe that stories will change the world. And now is your time to take action. Following what we've done for the why, I would ask you now to focus on the how. I would recommend you pause this video on this slide to have all the elements you need to define the markers and the character of your idea or of your brand, of your project. Please keep in mind, some of the steps we identify to define markers and character could be not so relevant for you. For example, if your idea doesn't have any brand behind, then the step number 3, brand markers, would not be something you should focus on. Same for the character. If you believe that the brand archetype is something that doesn't really suit what you're looking for, then you can skip it. The most important thing is that you try to follow those steps to make it as precise as possible on the markers and the character that define your how. And of course, have fun. At this stage, the bolder you are, the more you think out of the box, the more you challenge your perspective, even challenge your idea, the better the how will come out. Now that we have covered the why and the how, it's time to look at the what. So the what is composed by 2 key elements. The first one, the value proposition. What do you really offer? Now, to identify in the best way your value proposition, we recommend you to follow these 2 steps. The first one, the benefits to be attractive to customers. And the second one, the reason to believe, the RTB. Why your audience, your users, your customer should trust you that you're going to be able to deliver against your value proposition. Let's look back at the 4 mobile devices that we compare looking at their TV commercials: Nokia, Samsung, BlackBerry, and Apple. All of them, they were offering to their audience a very powerful value proposition with clear benefit communicated on their stories and the reason to believe, of course, the power of their brands. Now, in some cases, it's possible to use a big brands behind to give all the reason to believe to the audience. In some other cases, when the idea doesn't belong to a successful brand, we have to identify other levers. For example, the technology, the competitive advantage, the team, or the copyrights. Whatever would reassure the audience we are able to deliver exactly on what we promise. And then the second element is market, or in other words, the competitive landscape where your idea, your brand, or your project is going to focus on. To define your market correctly, you need to focus on 3 different steps. how the competitive ecosystem looks like for you, for your audience, and inside this competitive ecosystem, which are the closest competitors. Why do you think it's important to differentiate between the competitive ecosystem for you and for your audience? The answer is in the perception of your value proposition. Let me make an example to better understand this difference. Do you remember the Samsung TV commercial? The value proposition was about the functionality of the phone, and the benefits were focusing on the self-portrait and multi-shot. So if a potential shopper focused specifically on those two benefits to take the decision to buy a phone, for him, the competitive ecosystem are only mobile devices that have those two specific benefits, self-portrait and multi-shot. While if you ask Samsung, what's the competitive ecosystem for them? Probably the answer would be any mobile devices on that price range. So as you can see, for the users, the competitive ecosystem is slightly different than for Samsung as a brand. So define precisely your value proposition and identify clearly your competitive ecosystem will enable you to identify an effective what. Now, even if it comes after why and how, the what is absolutely fundamental to frame effectively a start with why idea. And you know why? Because the what is usually what consumers see. However, focusing only on your what makes your offer directly comparable with your competitors. Let's focus now on a real example. Let's start with the what is all about business telling. So the value proposition, business telling, is a business storytelling methodology that turns ideas into results through actionable stories. Business telling merge world-class experiences to support students, startups, professionals, brand, and organization on their path to result. This is the benefit exposition. And then the reason to believe. Since 2015, startups, corporate, and professionals have been using business telling. More than $5 million fundraised, more than 200 projects successfully completed across different industries, and more than 3,000 inspired students who attend online and offline training. And now, regarding the market, so for business telling, the competitive ecosystem is composed by storytelling and marketing consulting agencies, while for the audiences, the competitive ecosystem is more represented by, of course, storytelling and marketing consulting agencies, but also management consulting firms and public speaking professionals. I think it is a good example to better understand the difference between the competitive ecosystem for you, in this case business telling, and for your audience. For example, I would never include in the business telling competitive landscape public speaking professionals, but I have to keep it in mind when I refine my value proposition to make sure that interest, resonate, and activate my audience in the most effective way. And now it's time to define your what. I would recommend you to pause this video on this slide and to use the value proposition and the market in terms of competitive ecosystem to define a compelling what to complete the frame for your start with why idea. Let me start this lesson with a well done you. You have completed all the 3 key sections to frame effectively your start with why idea. Let's quickly sum them up to make sure we keep them in mind through the whole course. The first one, the why. Why the idea or the brand exists. The why is composed by 2 steps. Purpose, why does your idea, brand, or project exist? And insight, the user truth, the tension, and the need. And then we have the how to bring the idea to life. Also, the how is composed by 2 steps. The markers that somehow sign your idea, your brand, or your project, and the character. What if your idea, your brand, or your project was human? And then the what the idea is all about. With this value proposition, what do you really offer? And the market, the competitive ecosystem. Keep in mind for you and for your audience. So with this lesson, we have completed the Unleash the Power of Ideas part, where we learn how to move from the start with what idea to a much more effective start with why. This is one of the 2 elements of the area of control to deliver a successful path to result. It's time now to look at the second element, how to create actionable stories. See you in the next lesson. To deliver a successful path to result, after unleashing the power of ideas, we have to focus on how to create actionable stories. Every actionable story is like a journey, and the key element of this journey are, number one, the idea, or in other words, where the journey starts. Number two, the result, or the final destination, where the journey will end. Regarding the idea, we have covered in the previous lessons how to frame it in the most effective way to unleash the full power out of it. Regarding the results, let's have a look how we can optimize the final destination to make the journey as effective as possible and activate your audience. We need SMART results. To create actionable stories, we need to define SMART result. SMART result. Maybe you are already familiar with this acronym, but to make sure we're all in the same page, let's look at it more in detail. So S stands for specific. Try to be as specific as possible on defining how your final destination look like, which are the results, the goal you want to achieve. Then we have M, measurable. Try to define your result in a way that is measurable, because without measure, you cannot check progress. Try to use numbers instead of words, because numbers are measurable by definition, while words can change a lot based on the perspective of the people defining them, telling them, measuring them. So let's make an example. If I say that at the end of this year, I would like to have a great performance related to that specific project, well, it's going to be hard to define when these performances are going to be great or when they're going to be just good or decent, or on the other way, excellent. While if I say I'm expecting that the performance of this project by the end of this year will be double of the one of last year, or they will be increased by 30% compared with last year, then using numbers will make much easier to measure the progress and then to make the results measurable. And then we have A. A stands for achievable. Try to define achievable results. Now, achievable doesn't mean easy to get. Achievable can be very challenging, very stretching, but still, you need to define result you're going to be able to achieve if you play at your best and you use in the best way your skills and your resources. And then after achievable, we have relevant. Try to define relevant results or results that once achieved, they're going to deliver significant added value for you, your team, your project. Or in other words, try to define results that are worth it to put some effort behind. And then the last one, time bound. Put an expiring date on top of your results. Or in other words, put by when you want to achieve them. Because without a timeline, without an expiring date, without having a time-bound approach, it's going to be very hard to define effort and plan accordingly all the actions. And now it's time to take action. Look at your expected results. In case you don't have, try to define new ones and apply the SMART approach. I would strongly recommend you to put this video on pause, leave this chart on, and try to redefine your result following this approach. Once completed, feel free to move on with the lesson. Enjoy with your exercise. So looking back at the key elements of the journey, we have the idea that we said is where the journey starts. Then the result, the final destination. We have seen how to define result in a smart way. And then we have few other elements, the audiences, or in other words, the passengers, the travelers of this journey, the tellers, the guides or the drivers or the leaders of the journey, and last but definitely not least, the content. The content creates the landscape, what is all around the journey. Now, the most common framework we use to create a business story starts with an idea, and we have seen how to unleash the full power of ideas in the previous lessons. Then we have a teller or the guide or the lead of the journey that creates and shares content, the landscape of the journey, to engage and call the passengers or the audience to take the action the teller is looking for. Applying this framework, usually content is about what tellers want to tell. At business telling, we name such a story a teller-driven story, or in other words, a story focused on what the teller wants to say. And as we've seen in the Unleash the Power of Ideas, what does happen when we focus on the what? We deliver complexity. And complexity is the enemy of action. So why does a teller-driven story deliver complexity? Well, when the teller focuses on what he or she knows, usually they want to share too many options, too many messages, and too many stories. And the reason is simple. They know so much about the idea or the project, it's going to be hard to understand which are the benefits, which are the key assets that are going to be relevant for the audience to really take the action the teller is looking for. When we focus on too many options, too many messages, and too many stories, we deliver complexity. Let's play a quick game here to better understand what it means a teller perspective or a teller-driven story. We have a picture of a yellow school bus here, and the question is, which way is the bus going? To find the answer, let me give you a couple of hints. The first one, 80% of children can solve this puzzle instantly, but most adults cannot. And the second, probably answering one of your questions, we are looking at this bus in a right driving side country. So let me go back to the question. Do you know which way is the bus going? I'm going to give you 5 seconds to think about it. If you need more time, you can always put this video on pause, take the time you need, and then coming back to see the answer. Unfortunately, the 5 seconds are gone. Let's look at the answer together. If we are in a right driving side country, the bus would definitely go on the left. Did you guess correctly? Well done. You didn't? Let's try to understand why it's going to the left. A school bus, by definition, brings children to school, not adults. So children are the audience of this bus. Children are the one using the bus, so they know exactly how the bus looks like and how the bus works. Now, you are not the audience for this bus, so it's much harder for you to understand what is relevant, which are the key assets for the audience to understand how the bus works, and in this case, where the bus is going. Let me be a bit more precise on that. When you, an adult, look at this bus, you just see a yellow bus. While when children look at this bus, they see something different. They see a vehicle where once they get on board, they meet their schoolmates, the bus driver. So for them, this bus makes sense only when they get on board. When looking at the bus, you see a lot of details like the windows, the wheels, the total size of the bus, the color of the bus. And these details don't give you any hint to find the right direction. While when children look at the bus, they're only looking for one key element, the door to get in. Because only through that door they can get on board. And as we said previously, on board they find all what for them the bus is minimal for. So we understood why the bus is going to the left. But more important, we got more clarity on why 80% of children can solve this puzzle instantly. Because at the end, they are the final audience for the usage of the bus. So as you can see, when you're not part of the audience, the likelihood that you focus on details that are not relevant to completely understand the story, the action, the idea, the project is pretty high. The audience quite often look at some details that for you are not relevant or not important, while they don't pay attention to other aspects, other data, other facts, or other events that are very relevant for you, but maybe are not very relevant for them. Then how can we maximize the likelihood to share relevant information for our audience? And the answer is minimizing complexity. So how can we minimize complexity? And the answer to this question is we have to change perspective. Or in other words, we need to move from a teller-driven story to an audience-driven story. This means looking at the audience as part of the audience. If we take back for a second the quiz about where is the bus going, it means to look at the bus with the eyes of a child, not with the eyes of an adult. Let's apply now this new audience-driven perspective to the process of creation of a business story. The starting point remains the same, the idea, and we know how to unleash the full power of ideas. Then we have the audience instead of the teller. And from the audience perspective, a teller create and share content to call the audience to action. So now with this new framework, with this new audience-driven story framework, content are much more effective than the teller-driven framework. Because with this new framework, content is all about what the audience needs to know to take action. So the likelihood that the audience will take the action you are looking for is much higher. So to look at the audience as part of the audience, or in other words, to create an audience-driven story, you need to focus on 3 key steps. The first one, identify who is your who, understanding and knowing your audience upside down. Second is why would be your audience interested into your story. And the third one, you need to spell out precisely the action expected from your audience. In the next lesson, we're going to deep dive into each of these steps to better understand how to bring it to life in the most effective way. Let's start with the who is who. An in-depth understanding of your audience will help you to call your audience to action much more effectively. So step number 1, what we call the basics. Who will get exposed to your story? How many are going to be part of the audience? Where are they located? When the story will happen? So all this information are fundamental to define the best story to bring your why, how, and what to life. Spend time on this step. The better you define the basics, the higher the likelihood that the final result will be in line with your expectations. Second step, the strategic target. Strategic target are those in your audience who contribute the most to the success of the idea. Let's make a couple of examples to better understand how to define the strategic target. If you are a startup during your fundraising process and you are attending a pitch competition, you know that among your audience, you will have different types of investors. Some of them would prefer to be leading investors or to be the only one investing in your project. Some others, they love to be followers or following up other leading investors. Now, based on your needs, you are going to define who is going to be your strategic target or the part of your audience that you know is going to contribute the most to the success of your idea. Or if you are a professional launching a new service or a new product in the market, now you know your solution is going to be beneficial for the entire audience. But among the audience, there will be some entities, it could be individuals or organizations, that would benefit more from your solution. So those entities will be your strategic target. Or if you're a big brand, like for example, Apple in 2007, launching the new iPhone, you already have a portfolio of product out there. You have an audience following you. Your strategic target in that case would be all the people interested in buying premium price device. And then step 3, the prime prospect, a subset of the strategic target based on specific wants and or needs, which will be the source of near-term growth. Or in other words, your prime prospect will be the subset of your strategic target that would benefit the most from taking immediate action after your story. So, activating your prime prospect effectively has to be your number 1 priority. But the only way to activate them effectively is to first define them correctly. So, prime prospect can be defined only when you identify your strategic target. And the strategic target can be identified only when you have solid basics. So, quoting again the example of the startup during the fundraising process, your prime prospect could be a specific type of investor that is interested to invest in a very short term in that specific industry where you're focusing on. Or for professionals, your prime prospects would be subset of the strategic targets interested to buy your product or your service immediately. And then for existing brands or organizations, like for example Apple, launching the new iPhone in 2007, well, their prime prospect would have been early adopters or pioneers who want to be the first to buy the new stuff in the market, or even people that interested in premium price devices just wanted to change their old phones. Because whatever your story looks like and whoever you are, the only way to create an actionable story is start from your audience and start defining who is who. Now you know how to do it. 3 key steps. Define the basics, identify your strategic target, and finalize who is your prime prospect. Now, if you already have an idea, a project, a brand you're working on, I would kindly ask you to pause this video, to leave this chart on the screen, and to start defining who is your who. We're going to focus now on why your audience would be interested in your story. Defining the why is again a 3 steps process. Step number 1, why your story, why you, why your team. So on this first step, you should try to define why do you think your story would be relevant for them? And also, why do you think they would trust you to be able to deliver against your idea? And why do you think your team would be the right team to bring your idea to life? Now, I'm sure you know the answer to all these questions, but there is a big difference between knowing and being capable of telling. So this exercise here is really to map down why your story, why you, and why your team. Then we go on step number 2, why now? This is a fundamental question. This makes your audience understand why it's important to listen to you or to your story in this moment. Is there, for example, any new technology available? Or is there any external condition that has changed the market and your solution, your product, could fit and could answer the needs? Or do you have evidence, data, that the market would definitely be in demand of what you're offering? Let the audience know why now your story is relevant more than ever before. And step number 3, what's in it for your audience? What's in it for them to take action, to listen to your story, and to trust you? Map it down. It helps a lot to turn from knowing it to be able to share it. So, as we've previously done, to map down the who is your who, if you already have an idea, a project, or a brand you're working on, I would kindly ask you to pause this video and to leave this screen on and to start writing down why your audience would be interested into listening to your story. And now, after having defined who is your who and why the audience would be interested in your story, it's time to look at the action needed. So as action needed, we mean the action you need from your audience to achieve the result you're looking for. And like result, also actions should be defined in a smart way. So you remember what SMART stands for, right? Specific. Try to be specific on defining the action that you need from your audience. Measurable. Try to identify indicators can measure when your audience take action and how they take action. Achievable. Define your actions in a way that are going to be achievable by your audience. Then relevant. Let your audience know why the action you're asking them to take is relevant for your goal, for your result, and for your idea. And finally, time-bound. Put an expiration date in the action you're looking for. This means by when you need this task to be completed, by when you're expecting your audience to complete the action you're looking for. So, as you have done to define who is your who and why interested, I would kindly ask you to follow the same process also for action needed. If you could pause this video, leave this chart on, and try to write down the action I need is following the SMART way to define it. In the previous sections, we have seen how important it is to look at the idea from the audience perspective to make sure we create actionable stories and content about what the audience needs to know to take the action you are looking for. So now that you know who is your who, why is interested, and the action needed, it's time to look at the teller. And more precisely, we're going to show you the proven and effective tools we use at Business Telling to show you how to become an effective teller. Now, it's important to keep in mind there is always a teller. Whoever you are, whatever your stories look like, behind every story, there is always a teller. Sometimes in person, sometimes in a group of people, sometimes even in other formats like presentations, videos, packaging, audio, reports, emails, and other formats you have in mind. But behind every story, there is and there will be always a teller. To become an effective teller, you need to focus on a triad. The triad is composed by three key elements: the brain, the heart, and the body. Do you know what is great about the triad? Every human being has a brain, has a heart, and has a body. This means that every human being has a triad necessary to become an effective teller. Or in other words, every human being can become an effective teller. First element of the triad, the brain. Or in other words, the few habits we recommend to follow to make sure you create and share content in the most effective way. Habit number 1, start with the end in mind. For every action you are going to take, or for every action your audience is supposed to take, try to visualize how the final outcome looks like and try to walk back from this successful visualization. Because walking back from a situation you already visualize makes the whole planning much easier than to walk towards something you don't really know how it's going to look like. And then habit number 2, first things first. So when you plan your action or your activities, try to focus on the most relevant one first and to leave the least relevant at the end. And then habit number 3, think win-win. Or in other words, when you plan the action you are expecting from your audience, think in a way that is going to be beneficial for you and for them. Think win-win. It means you both win, you and your audience, when your audience will be activated. Start with the end in mind, first things first, and think win-win are the 3 key habits we recommend to apply to become an effective teller. These 3 habits are taken from The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, a very famous book written by Stephen Covey, where you can find the 7 key habits of people that have delivered outstanding results. We strongly recommend to read it because it's very insightful and it's going to help you a lot to make your brain effective as possible to become an effective teller. On the notes below this video, you can find a referral link to have more information about this book and about this author, Stephen Covey. Second element of the triad, the heart. To become an effective teller, you should definitely listen to your heart. So let's have a look on how to do it effectively with the purpose of creating actionable stories. Step number 1, feel your feeling. I'm sure you are excited about your idea, your project, your brand. So try to share the feeling, try to share the excitement, try to share the passion, and most important, the why this project is relevant for you. Don't forget the power of feelings when the purpose is to activate your audience. Feelings can be much more effective than any data, any facts, any information you are going to share through your story. And then step number 2, define your style. So which kind of personality, of humor, which type of energy you want to bring to life. Try to sign your story with your unique style. And then step number 3, create emotional connection. So just for a second, close your eyes and try to visualize how do you feel about your idea? How do you feel about the story you are creating? And more important, how do you want to make your audience feel about it? The more you focus on the feeling you want to share, the more you're going to be able to bring this feeling to life and to create connection through this feeling. And in this direction, I would like to quote Maya Angelou, an American poet who died in 2014, who was saying, I've learned that people will forget what you said. They will also forget what you did, that people will never forget how you made them feel. On the note below this video, you can find also a referral link to Maya Angelou and her quote. And the third element to complete the triad is the body. When we say body, we don't refer only to the human body. With the word body, we include also the format we are going to use to bring the story to life. The first step to leverage the body in the most effective way is to make a 3D story, or in other words, to unleash the full power of the format. Now, if in person, this means to use the full body, to play with the vocal variation, to play with the silence. So this means to use the body to bring the story to life, not only in terms of thinking and feeling, but also from the physiology, or in other words, to make the story a 3D story. And what if we don't have physical presence to tell the story? Well, this means the format is a different one, but the concept is still the same. If you're going to use a PowerPoint, a PDF, if you're going to use a video, an audio, try to play with all the features of this format. Try to make the format standing out to create a 3D story. And then the step number 2, to leverage the body effectively, is emotion is motion. Or in other words, motion is a key element to unlock emotions. So we have seen in the previous section how important feelings and emotions are, both on what you feel and how you make your audience feel. So when you feel that your story is lacking in terms of emotions or feeling, leverage your body, create emotion to unlock and unleash emotions. And quoting again Tony Robbins, the famous American leadership coach, proximity is power. So try to put your body as close as possible to the audience. The closer you are, the more effective you will be. And the last step to leverage your body in the most effective way is make a 3C check, where 3C stand for context, calibration, and congruence. So context means try to leverage your body within the context where you are immersed on. Then calibration, try to play with your body in balance with the triad, so with brain and heart. And congruence, or in other words, try to leverage your body in congruence with the message you're bringing to life through the story. And to remark one more time the importance of leverage the body in the most effective way, keep in mind that when the teller is in person, to activate the audience, words count only for 7%, voice qualities for around 38%, and physiology, or in other words, body, count for 55%. And now it's your turn to take action. So if you need, put this video on pause, leave this chart on, and try to define brain, heart, and body for your actionable story. Once completed, feel free to move on to the next lesson. So now that we have completed how to effectively define your audience, focusing on who is your who, why would be interested in your story, and the action you need, and we have completed how to become an effective teller, focusing on the triad, the brain, the heart, and the body, it's time to focus on the content. As we know, every actionable story is like a journey. The content represents the landscape that the teller creates to call the audience to action. So let's focus now on how to create content about what the audience needs to know to take the action you are looking for. Now, to make sure we minimize complexity when creating content, we should avoid focusing on the too many options, messages, and stories. So, to minimize complexity, instead of focusing on too many, we should focus on less is more. In business telling, less is more means less complexity to create more action. So, the question we should ask is how to create less complexity? And the answer is more pre-work. Let's look together what more pre-work means. The first element to consider is the line of visibility to audience. What is going to happen below this line is not visible to audience. What is going to happen above the line is what the audience will see. So below the line, we have what we call the strategy. Strategy is led by the teller. It has to be completed with some pre-work, or in other words, work that has to be done before the story is going to be visible to the audience. And then above the line is what we call the execution, or in other words, the content that are going to be visible to the audience. When the teller is creating the strategy, focusing on framing the idea and building the actionable story, is quite frequently facing some complexity. Because as we've seen in the previous sections, when framing the idea, usually tellers start with what instead of with why, and looking at the actionable story, they look at the teller perspective instead of the audience perspective. So they need some pre-work to reduce complexity and to make sure that the content is actionable enough to call the audience to take the action they are looking for. So the less the pre-work, the more content will be created. Because as we've seen in the previous section, when we start with what, we're going to create more content because we don't focus on the key assets that are going to activate our audience, but we focus on benefits that in our perspective are relevant for the actionability of the story. And guess what? When we create more content, instead of reducing complexity, we increase complexity. So when we have less pre-work and more content, we just increase the amount of complexity that we're going to transfer to our audience. And as we said at the beginning, complexity is the enemy of action. Now, if we take the same teller, but now doing more pre-work, so making sure that is unleashing the full power of ideas, moving from the start with what to the start with why, and is creating actionable story, applying the right perspective, the audience perspective, become an effective teller, and creating actionable content. So the more pre-work, the less content are needed to activate the audience. And why is it happening? Because with less content and more pre-work, we transfer less complexity to our audience. So less complexity means more actionability. It means activating the audience more effectively. So the most effective way to make sure we minimize complexity is to increase the pre-work. Less complexity, more pre-work. But pre-work takes time. That's the reason why a lot of tellers, instead of defining the strategy effectively, they jump into execution, creating a lot of content that at the end of the day doesn't help the audience to take the action they are looking for. Even the famous Mark Twain was aware of the importance of the pre-work, and that's the reason why we like to share his quote. I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote you a long one instead. So the pre-work to create actionable content is to move from too many to less is more. It means from too many options, whether there are too many products, too many services, too many solutions, offered and communicated at the same time, to fewer options, having clarity on the why you choose a specific content or solution to bring your idea to life. So fewer options means more clarity on the purpose. And then from too many messages with too much content used to build stories and to bring to light different options, to bigger messages with focus on key elements like images, reducing text and words, and define the right narrative. This means creating bigger messages, highlighting what we call the markers. And then the last one, from too many stories, and too many stories used to connect with the audience drives only information overload, to better stories, or in other words, immersing the audience perspective to create engaging and actionable content. So the last is perspective. To apply the less is more approach in your pre-work to create actionable content, you should then focus on purpose, so the why behind every content you create, the markers, which are the key elements that define the content in terms of images, colors, and try to reduce as much as possible text and words. And last, definitely not least, perspective. Immerse yourself in the audience perspective to understand if the content you're creating could be engaging and actionable to call the audience to action. And now let's look at some key questions or actions we recommend to make sure we apply the three elements in the most effective way. So to make sure you focus effectively on purpose, try always to answer these two questions. The first one, why do you need that specific content? And the second one, why audience could benefit from that? After the purpose, we have the markers. The markers are somehow the signature we use to bring content to life. Examples of markers are colors, audio, visuals, images, fonts, even the type of wording that we want to use, and also the type of narratives, or the type of flows that we're going to apply in the process of sharing the content with our audience. You can find plenty of examples out there, but in this chart, we've decided to focus on 6 examples that are the most used on creating content for actionable stories. Example number 1, Breaking news. This is what we say the journalistic narrative is used for opening, re-grab attention with catching and inspiring news or fact. Example number 2. Logical. This narrative is used to drive the focus with a logical approach. For example, if X is equal to Y and Y is equal to Z, then X is equal to Z, where X, Y, and Z could be benefit you are offering, or a specific solution you are proposing to the market, or different type of products. And then the third example, The Hero Journey by Joseph Campbell. This one is used quite frequently in movies. In The Hero Journey, we have the ordinary world, then a call to adventure for our hero, then different trials along the way, then we have the climax, and finally the resolution. If you want to have more information about the hero journey, you can find the referral link in the notes below this video. Example 4. The power of one. There is only one and only one solution, challenge, slide to remember, whatever. This is a very simple and powerful narrative. Example number 5. The rule of 3. 3 is used quite often in comedy and is also effective in example like there are 3 men, or we have 3 options, etc. And the last one, the metaphor. The metaphor is a narrative that you use to bring the audience into an analogous scene to share the idea. Narratives are not a must-have in the process of creating content, but time to time they can help you to be more effective and engaging on bringing to life your message. Now, based on your specific needs, you're going to choose the right narrative to bring to life the content in the most effective way. And after purpose and markers, the third step in the process of minimizing complexity to create actionable content is perspective. Let's take a look for a second at the picture on the left. There are 2 men, one on an island and one on a boat. The man on the island is screaming, "Boat," because he believes that the boat is the only way to be rescued. On the other side, the man on the boat is screaming, "Land," because he thinks exactly the opposite, that the island is the only place where he can be rescued. There is not an absolute right and an absolute wrong. It's all a matter of perspective. Then in the process of minimizing complexity to make our content as actionable as possible, we should always keep in mind the different perspective between the teller and the audience. So to help on this, we decide to list down some recommended actions. For example, if you are a startup, mentoring or advising for other startups could help you to change perspective, to move from the land to the boat and from the boat to the land. Or for independent professionals or consultants, applying the reverse selling, asking 3 clients to sell you back your offer. Because applying the reverse selling, you are forced to change perspective. And last recommended action for big organizations and corporations, the reverse mentoring, having mentor and mentee exchanging role time to time. Now, it doesn't really matter if you want to apply this recommended action or other ones. The only important aspect here is that you keep exercising on changing perspective. So when you work on your actionable content to create actionable stories, don't forget to focus on purpose, the purpose of your content, the markers, and the perspective. And now is your turn to take action. Take an existing content or think about a new one and exercise on the purpose, the potential markers to define that content, and the different perspective from a teller to the audience side. If easier, you can put this video on pause and leave this chart on, or even going back to the lesson to identify the different steps for purpose, markers, and perspective. Once you have done with the exercise, feel free to move to the next lesson. In this section, we have seen how business telling works. We have seen that every actionable story is like a journey. Do you remember the key element of the journey? Element number 1, idea, where the journey starts. And we have seen how to unleash power of the ideas, starting with why. So why first, then how, and then what the idea is all about. Second element of the journey, results, the final destination. We have seen how to create smart results. And then we have the audiences, or in other words,
the passengers or the travelers of this journey. And we have seen how to identify effectively your audience, starting from who is your who, why interested in your story and your idea, and the action needed. And then, of course, the tellers, or in other words, the guides, the drivers, or the leaders of this journey. Tellers become effective
when they effectively apply the triad.
And the triad is composed by brain, heart, and body. And then the last key element, content. Content creates the landscape. And to create actionable content, tellers should focus on the purpose, the markers, and the perspective. At the beginning of this section, we have seen that to deliver a successful path to result, we have 4 key elements: the idea, the story, the action, and the result. We've also learned that we should focus on the idea and the story because they belong to the area of control. And when we're going to create an effective idea and an actionable story, then we're going to create a positive influence in the audience action and the result that they fall into the area of influence. And within the area of control, we know how to unleash the power of ideas, moving from start with what to a start with why idea. And also how to create actionable stories, moving from a teller-driven story to an audience-driven story. And this brings us to the end of this section. So let's have a look at the key takeaways. We learn what is the path to result and how it works. We also learn how to unleash the power of ideas, focusing on why, how, and what. And finally, we learn how to create actionable stories, focusing on the audience, the tellers, and the content. As you have seen, this section is one of the richest in terms of content and learnings of the whole course. So, to become a master and to unleash the power of ideas and creating actionable stories, you need to repeat. You need to try and try again. Because the golden rule is always repetition is the mother of mastery. So, well done. You did it. You successfully completed How Business Telling Works, the 5th section of this complete course in business telling. If you will keep practicing all the new tools and the new methodology you just learned, you will step change your capability to activate your audience and ultimately to deliver results. And now we have only one section left to complete this complete course. Are you ready to design your actionable story? So see you in the next session.
Hello, and welcome back to the course. Let me tell you one more time, well done. You reached the 6th and final section, your actionable story. So after learning the founding principle of business telling, we are our stories, we walk through how better stories equal better results. Then we learn why learn business telling and what is business telling. And in the last section, we understood how business telling works. So it's time now to create your actionable story. Or in other words, now it's time to travel, to make your audience travel through your journey. With the word journey, we mean both the action of going from one place to another, and in a more metaphorical way, we use journey also to talk about progress in life or in business, like in our case. So whatever your story looks like, you always need a compass to understand where you are and where you want to go, and a map to understand how to get there. So let's start with the compass. The compass shows the 4 cardinal directions: north, east, south, and west, and is normally used when we're moving from one point to another. And then how does the compass look when we want to apply the 4 cardinal directions to business telling? Let's then discover the 4 of them. What could be the equivalent of the north for the compass? In business telling, our north is the idea. It's the point of reference we always use to create the content and define our story. And then we have the audience. As we said in the previous sections, we should always try to look at our content and our story from the audience perspective. And then any clue, which could be the 3rd cardinal direction in the business telling compass? Let's look at it together. The 3rd cardinal direction is teller. And as we know, to become effective, a teller should apply the triad: brain, heart, and body. And then the fourth cardinal direction, the content, focusing on purpose, markers, and perspective. This is how the business telling compass looks like. This is the tool we're going to use to define where we are now and where we want to go. So keep in mind the four cardinal directions: idea, audience, teller, and content. And in this slide, you can find a summary of all the steps we've learned together to define effectively each cardinal direction. To read it and apply it correctly, you should always read it from the center outwards. So for idea, we have start with why, then the how, and then what. For audience, we have who is your who, why interested, and the smart action needed. For the teller, you have the famous triad, brain, heart, body, and then content with purpose, markers, and perspective. And to create your business compass in the most effective way, you can find here our canvas, where you have all that you need to define results, idea, audience, teller, and content. You can download the printable version of this slide in PDF format using the link that you find in the notes here below. And in the same PDF, you can find also this second canvas with all the key takeaways from the different sections. In this way, we're going to make sure you don't forget any step on defining your cardinal directions. And then after the compass, it's time to look at the map, or in other words, how we get to the final destination. So in the process of creating your actionable story, the map is the structure of the story. At Business Telling, we use a tried and tested map to make your audience travel through the journey in the most effective way. This map is called Travel. Now, learning and using Travel will enable you to maximize both the action taken by your audience and your result. Since 2015, Travel has been successfully used by startups, professionals, and bigger organizations to create effective actionable stories, such as sales decks, pitch decks, marketing activation, speeches, business reports, brand advertising, team workshop, etc. So whatever your story looks like, Travel is the map that activates audiences to travel from receiver of the story to player, ready to take the action needed in the most effective and actionable way. Now, let's look together at how Travel works. Here on the left, we have our start with why idea. And then we have our who, our audience. So an audience always starts as a receiver of a story. Now, the story is what links the idea to the audience. It's the way the teller wants to bring to life the idea to activate the audience. Now, the more actionable the story, the more receivers will be activated. So we want to make our audience travel from receiver to player. Audiences become players when they take the action recommended by the story. So to take action, players need to understand the why, the how, and the what of the idea relevant to them. Let's try to explain a bit more in details this part of the process, because it's fundamental to really understand how to make your audience travel from receiver to player. When the audience is a receiver, is outside the idea, as we've seen in the previous chart. As a receiver, it doesn't know yet the why, the how, and the what the idea is all about. Now, through the story, the teller tries to bring to life the idea, and is trying to make the why, the how, and the what relevant also to the audience. So while the story goes on, the audience starts to understand more about the why, the how, and the what of the idea. And based on how much relevant they have to them, they will start create their own version of the why, the how, and the what. And most important, the action the audience will be willing to take at the end of the story is directly correlated with the size of the why, the how, and the what they created listening to the story. In other words, the red circles here on the bottom right just represent what the audience has understood about the idea listening to the actionable story. So the more the idea is relevant to them, and the better the story is bringing the idea to life, the more they will be inspired to take action. Because the purpose of any actionable story is to make the audience travel from receiver, where the audience is outside of the idea, to player, where the audience has created his own version of the idea based on the why, the how, and the what it perceived from the story. Now, to make them as big as possible, to make sure that the audience is taking as much action as possible, we need an audience-driven story. And the best structure we can use to create an audience-driven story is travel. It's time now to put travel in action. Let's first look together at the 6 steps that compose the travel map. Step 1, takeoff, is all about how to grab the attention of the audience. And then step 2, relate, how to build rapport with your audience. Step 3, assess. Assess the landscape to fuel interest and engagement. Step 4, visualize, how to visualize the solution. Step 5, execute, how it works, bring the solution to life. And then step 6, landing. Landing is all about the actionable takeaways to call to action. So these are the 6 steps that compose the travel map. Now we're going to deep dive into each of them to better understand how to apply it effectively. And don't forget, order and sequence are fundamental. So the TRAVEL is a proven effective map, and we know that through this map, we make the audience move towards action and away from complexity. So here we go with step 1 of our travel map, the takeoff. Like in a physical journey, where you're traveling, for example, by plane, and the plane leaves the ground and start flying. Or in other words, leave one state to move to a new one. So we want to recreate the same takeoff for our passengers, our audience. We want to make them leaving the ground and start flying. How can we do that? Well, the answer is grab their attention. Because only by grabbing their attention, you will be able to make them change their state from receiver of the story to future player, willing to take the action you are looking for. Then why takeoff is so important to deliver an effective travel? Well, takeoff is crucial because it's the gateway for the audience to get on board with the story. And don't forget, the audience will remember what came first and what came last the most. And based on the experience of many actionable stories successfully delivered, we can tell you the takeoff often talks to the reptile brain, or in other words, that part of the brain we don't rationally control, that part of the brain that most of the time is the final decision maker. So how can we bring the takeoff to life effectively? For example, through a simple statement of what change you and your idea are making in the world or business. A memorable one-sentence explanation of what you do for your customers and consumers. Something like how to do something, or the last chance to attend, to play something, and why this could be relevant, or why to do that, or why to keep doing or not doing something. And then while creating this simple statement, be original. Grab the attention of the audience through a surprising statement, or an intriguing one, or a question statement, or an inspiring statement, or even using a dramatic story, or an impactful quote, a definition, or even an inspiring image that can somehow talk for itself. So as you can see, there are so many different options to create the right statement or to use the right image or the right video to grab the attention of the audience that is almost impossible to list all of them in one chart. But there is one simple test you can use to check the effectiveness of your takeoff. And this test can be applied to any solution you have chosen. It's the wow effect. So if you believe that the solution or the execution you have chosen to grab the attention of the audience somehow will make them think or feel or say, wow, then probably you're sitting on the right takeoff. And to be sure that is a real wow, you can always test with a small group of audience instead of a large one and see their reaction. However, if you feel that your solution is not a wow yet, don't lose faith. To create a wow attention grabber can take much longer than expected. So my recommendation is look back at your compass, focus on your idea, try to understand what is really relevant for your audience, and keep working on creating your wow takeoff. Keep in mind, the first step is quite often the hardest to be taken. So in this direction, to help you to define a better takeoff, do you want to see an example in action? Well, you have already been experiencing travel because this complete course in business telling has been structured using the travel map. Now, do you remember how we opened the first section of this course? We are our stories. The world is calling. All around the world, audiences, ideas, and business are looking for story creators, storytellers, and story lovers. As you can see, we open with "We are our stories," a simple and engaging statement that somehow resonates with almost everybody. And then to really grab the attention of our audience, we use the breaking news approach. The world is calling. Now, if you think it could be helpful, you can always find some source of inspiration from the narrative examples that we share in the previous section. In this case, we use the breaking news approach. I hope you have found this example from business telling helpful to better understand how to frame your takeoff effectively. We're going to see another takeoff example in the full case study we're going to present at the end of this course. And now is your time to take action. So once you have completed successfully the business compass, defining the 4 cardinal directions, idea, audience, teller, and content, then you can start focusing on the travel map. And the first step, the takeoff. So to help you in the process of defining how to grab the attention of your audience, we strongly recommend you to use this summary slide where you can find the result, the don't forget as the final destination of your journey, and all the tips to create a wow takeoff. You can download a PDF printable version of this slide at the link you can find in the notes below this video. So have a great takeoff and see you in the next lesson where we're going to introduce how to build rapport with your audience. Time now to look at the second step in the process of building our travel map. Relate, or in other words, build rapport with the audience. So why is it so important to relate effectively? Because once you grab their attention, the most effective way to turn this attention into interest is to build rapport with the audience. Then let's have a look at some guidelines to better understand how to do it effectively. Let's start with give all the reason to believe, or RTB, needed to create trust. For example, who is who? So here you can introduce yourself as a teller, introduce the team, try to give you some background to the audience about the person who is leading this story, or the person or the group of people that is behind this story. And then why happening now? You can also try to immerse yourself in audience perspective, or to make the audience do something, like raise the hand, or say something loud, or stand up. Then one more action that is pretty effective on bringing relate to life is sharing appreciation, recognition, how delighted you are of being there, of working on this project with that team, etc. And one last guideline is to use an inclusive language and to avoid controversy. So these are 4 examples of guidelines to bring to life relate in an effective way. As you can imagine, there will be plenty more, but it's almost impossible to map down every single guideline. So the secret here is really to know your audience, to know who is your audience, why they're interested, and the action you need from them. And also to use you as a teller, the triad, in the most effective way. Keeping in mind the purpose of the content you're creating, the markers, and the perspective. This is a crucial element to build rapport with the audience. Immerse in the audience perspective. And now, as we've done for the takeoff, let's have a look at the example from business telling. Do you remember what was all about the second section of this course? We talk about better stories equal better result, and the key takeouts: successful brands tell successful stories, and only 9% take immediate action. And then we said that whoever you are and whatever your story looks like, better stories equal better results. So the purpose behind this section was to build rapport with our audience, or in other words, to make our audience feel part of the journey, whoever they are and whatever their stories look like. And we also thought it would be useful to apply a narrative. So we have chosen the logical approach. If you remember, in that section, we were using quite often examples like better stories equals more action, and more action equals better result. So better stories equal better results. As you can see, narratives, time to time, can provide some support, but don't feel forced to use a narrative. You can definitely define a section of your story without any narrative. Use them if they are useful for your need. And now is your time to take action. Keeping always in mind the compass, let's focus on the travel map, and more precisely on the second step, relate. Let's look at how to build rapport with our audience, leveraging the 4 cardinal directions, idea, audience, teller, and content, and using the guidelines we've just covered in this lesson. More than any other step in the travel map, for relate, you should definitely exercise to switch perspective. You remember the example of the land and the boat, right? So try to immerse in your audience perspective and try to define the purpose of the content you want to focus on and the markers you could leverage to create that rapport that will enable your audience to relate with your story. And to make this exercise as effective as possible, together with the compass, we recommend you use this printable version of this slide. So after completing the results and the takeoff, let's focus now on relate. Enjoy. And now it's time for step 3 of the travel map, assess. So after takeoff and relate, let's focus on how to assess the landscape to fuel interest. Fueling interest is a key step in the process of creating engagement among the audience and activate them to take the action you are looking for. So let's have a look why assess the landscape is important to deliver that. Because to fuel interest, the audience needs to understand the problem, the challenge, and or the opportunity you are facing. And whatever your story looks like, as a teller, you would like your audience to completely understand the landscape and feeling that the problem, the challenge, and or the opportunity you are facing is relevant to them too. Then how to do that? So, based on many actionable stories successfully delivered, we have identified 2 key guidelines to bring assess to life in the most effective way. For each guideline, we identified some key questions that will help you to look at the landscape from the audience perspective. Guideline 1, pain and gain. What problem are you solving for your users? What does the pain result in? Can you make the pain a problem that anyone can relate to? How many people need this problem solved? And what's the market size behind this problem? Have you validated that people will pay to have it solved? So these are just few examples of questions that we heard audience asking tellers. If you start designing your content based on answering these questions, the likelihood that that content will resonate with your audience is much higher than if you keep walking without really put yourself in the audience perspective. And then the second key guideline. Why you? Why do you care about solving this problem? How has your life been affected by this industry? Why should your audience have confidence that you are driven to do what you promise, no matter what? So if you combine together these 2 guidelines, the first one, make the audience better understand the pain and the gain, and then address why you are the right person, why your team is the right team, will make the audience confident that the progress of the story would be relevant for them. Then, as we have done for takeoff and relate, let's have a look at an example from business telling to better understand how to bring to life assess. So, do you remember what the third section of this course was all about? We were talking about why learn business telling, and the key takeaways were too many equal complexity. Complexity is the enemy of action, and the 4 key reasons to learn business telling. Because while learning the importance of using actionable stories, we face a challenge. That is, what makes a story not actionable? So the purpose of that section was to bring to life that challenge and make it relevant to the audience, and also showing that business telling provides the answer to that challenge. And also in this section, to fuel interest in a more engaging way, we decide to use a narrative example. In that specific case, the hero journey, where the hero is our teller. And if you remember, the key steps of the hero journey. The first one was the ordinary world. And actually, in that third section, we talk about successful brand tell actionable stories. Then we compare the top 100 global brands from 2001 to 2019. And then finally, we compare the 2007 mobile phones among 4 brands: Nokia, Samsung, BlackBerry, and Apple. And then the second step of the journey, the call to adventure. And actually, we compare the launch of their 4 new devices, and we saw that some stories were more actionable than others. So our call to adventure was what make a story not actionable? And try to answer this question, we enter into the third step of the hero journey, the trials along the way. Actually, we realize that complexity is the enemy of action. And also, a teller creates complexity when it focuses on too many messages, too many options, or too many stories. So, keeping that in mind, we finally got to the climax. That is, we want to minimize complexity because minimizing complexity is going to deliver better results. Then we reach the resolution, the final step of the hero journey. And the resolution for us are the key 4 reasons to learn business telling. So, maximizing business storytelling potential, minimizing complexity, drive action, and deliver results. This is the example for business telling. And of course, assess will be different for every story based on the different business compass. So whatever content and narrative you're going to use to assess the landscape, please keep in mind the 2 guidelines that we share in this lesson. 1, share the pain and the gain. And 2, why you? Why your solution? So it's your time now to take action. As we've done previously for takeoff and relate, we have again the business compass on your left, and it's time to define the third step of the travel map, assess. And then, if relevant and helpful for you to become more effective on defining every step of the travel map, in this case, assess, you can always use this printable PDF where so far we cover result, the takeoff, relate, and now assess. This step is crucial to bring to life the second part of the travel map in the most successful way. Take all the time you need and see you when you're ready in the next lesson. Hello, and welcome to step 4, the moment when the teller is going to visualize the solution. Welcome to visualize. Why do we say that visualize is the moment? Visualize is the climax of the story. It's the moment where the solution to the problem or the challenge or the opportunity is revealed. Now, solutions falls in 2 possible categories, when they have traction and the one without traction. So the one with traction are called business, the one without are called concepts. Sometimes tellers don't really see such a big difference between business and concept, but I can tell you, it makes a massive difference for the audience. In fact, all of us as a human being, we feel more comfortable, to get closer to an idea, to a product, to a service that has been already validated by other humans. Now, we all know that it's very hard for brand new ideas or product or services not launched yet to show traction. But then if that's your case, you should look at the data, the information, the events you collected to define your ideas and find your solution. And among them, you should find something that is going to prove that the solution you are bringing to life in this step of the map, visualize, is the right solution to the problem, the challenge, or the opportunity you presented in the previous step, assess. In other words, try to back up your solution to move as quickly as you can from concept to business. And how to do that? So, as we have done for the previous steps, take off, relate, assess. Also for visualize, we're going to share a couple of guidelines. And for each guideline, you're going to find a few questions that are going to help you to make your visualize much more effective. Guideline 1, idea or product or service. And some questions. How does it work? What does your idea or product or service do for users? What can your user do as a result of your product? What opportunities do you provide for people to be faster, safer, more cost-effective, and more consumer-friendly? And also, have you tested with real users? So as you can see, the first guideline is all about try to change the perspective. You look at your solution, your idea, your project, or your service. And then changing perspective is going to be easier to focus on the key benefits that are going to be very relevant for your audience. And then the second guideline is all about user validation so far. Do you have any user pilot results? Or do you have any usage data, downloads, feedback, any user testimonials, PR coverage, competition benchmarking? So any data or facts that can strengthen your case. So in a nutshell, the two guidelines are all about try to look at your solution from the audience perspective, and in the audience perspective, try to validate your idea, your product, your service to show that there is already traction or interest behind that. And now let's look at the example from this course in business telling. We visualized the solution in section 4 that was all about what is business telling, and the key takeouts of that section were the purpose, turn ideas into results through actionable stories, the value proposition, a proven, effective, and easy to use methodology, and of course, the experience we have in working with startups, global brands, and academic research. So, as shared through our guidelines, from one side, we focus on what business telling brings to our audience, and on the other side, the validation, our experience, and our proven effective methodology. And also in this fourth step of the travel map, visualize, we decided to use a narrative example, the power of one, to help us creating a more engaging and actionable content. And if you remember, we opened that session with a question that was, have you ever experienced that you could have achieved better result if only your story were more effective in bringing your idea to life or calling your audience to action? And do you remember the answer? The answer was business telling. However, if you feel that you don't need the narrative or you want to choose a different one, they are just there to help you in becoming more effective on creating actionable content. So don't feel obliged to use them. Try to choose what is needed for you. And as you already know, when you see this chart, it's your time now to take action. So we have the business compass on our left, and let's focus on the fourth step of the travel map. Let's visualize the solution. As for the previous steps of the travel map, you can always use this printable PDF you're going to find at the link here below. So after the result, take off, relate, and assess, it's time to look at visualize. And here you can find the guidelines with the key questions that are going to help you to define more effective content. So enjoy it and take all the time you need. This is the climax of the travel map. So make it a masterpiece and see you at the next step. Hello and welcome to the fifth step of the travel map, execute, or in other words, how your idea, your product, your service works. So why execute is such an important step in the journey of making your audience travel from receiver of the story to active player, ready to take the action you are looking for. Because to gain trust and credibility, you must show the audience how the solution works and how it will bring results and added value to customers and to consumers. So once your solution has been visualized effectively, and we explain how in the previous step, visualize, it's time now to execute it. It's time now to show what the execution looks like. Because as A.G. Lafley, former P&G CEO, once said, execution is the only strategy your consumer will ever see. So the question is, how can we bring to life execution in the most engaging and effective way? As in the previous steps, we identify some key guidelines and some related questions that will help you to execute with excellence. So the first guideline is all about a demo of your idea, product, or service. Do you have a live demo? Do you have a video of the usage or a mock-up? Anything that convinces this is for real and you can execute. Or even better, if you can show a real user using or experience your product, your service, or your idea. And then we have the second guideline that is all about the business model. So what's your adoption strategy? How do you make money? What's the opportunity for growth? How can you scale beyond the current scope? For example, new industries, new territories, new areas of applications, potential new partnership. Or what about the technology, existing technology, a potential new technology? And this brings us to the third guideline. What's unique versus competition? So try to focus on the technology you use, the relationships you have, and the partnership that you can develop. And key questions here would be, how do you help your users to get the result differently versus competitor or versus other alternatives? And what's new and innovative about your solution? Here you are really to show that you know the market and what competition is out there. And then last but not least, the fourth guideline, the team. Who is who in your team? What relevant experience or skills does your team have to support the idea and the story? Any successful brands that you or your team have been working for, or significant achievement, or sales success? And then what binds you together in this special journey? What's special about the character of your team? And what makes you and your team stand out? These are the four key guidelines that we recommend you to use to bring to life the how it works in the most effective, compelling, and actionable way. Now, these are guidelines. So, as guidelines, it's up to you to choose which one you want to exploit more to bring to life the how it works in the most effective, compelling, and actionable way. Then let's have a look at the example we use in this complete course in business telling. We brought to life execute in the fifth section of this course. There was how business telling works. And if you remember, the three key takeaways were the path to results, unleash the power of ideas, and create actionable stories with a focus on audience, tellers, and content. So as you can see, in this specific example from business telling, we have decided to focus only on one key guideline, the one about the idea, product, or service. And this happens because to bring how it works to life, we thought it would have been much more effective to start from the methodology instead of focusing on what's the difference versus the competition, or our business model, or who is who behind the team. Of course, it would have been much different if this presentation was an investor pitch. Then, of course, having clarity on who is who or the business model would have been absolutely fundamental. So to execute with excellence, try always to keep in mind the four guidelines, but try to choose the one that are the most relevant for your story at that specific moment. And in terms of content, if you think a narrative could help you to make it more engaging, more compelling, and more actionable, definitely go for it. In our specific example, we took as a narrative the rule of three, where three are the most important actions you should take when you want to bring to life business telling in an effective way. That are, define your path to result, unleash the power of ideas, and create your actionable story. And now, as usual, is your time to take action. So we have the business compass on the left, and let's focus on execute, the fifth step to bring to life the travel map. We always recommend to use this printable PDF to have the best overview of the different steps of the travel map. So after takeoff, relate, assess, and visualize, now it's time to focus on execute. And here you can find all the key guidelines to make sure you execute with excellence. Take the time you need, enjoy the exercise, and see you at the next and last step. Cabin crew, prepare for landing. If you have ever taken a plane, I'm sure you heard already this announcement. And this means that we're almost at the end of our journey. Yes, we reached the sixth and last step of the travel map. Landing is all about the actionable takeaways to call the audience to action. So why landing is such an important step in the process of creating an actionable story that is able to turn ideas into results in an effective way? And the answer is that it's time to tell the audience what to do to become active players and to show them how their action will make the difference. If there is one message they should definitely remember, this should be the landing. So how can we make this step so powerful for our audience? As in the previous steps, we identify some key guidelines that we recommend to follow to make sure the landing is addressed successfully. First guideline is about driving clarity on the type of investment you need. Is it money, time, network, one of them, all of them? So let's have a look at some key questions we should focus on to make sure we define what we're looking for in the most effective way. Let's start with money. So, for example, have you invested money yourself? Or have you raised money so far? How much are you looking for? What big next step you use the investment for? What milestone you will reach with the money? How many and what type of investor are you looking for? And in case you are looking also or only for time or network, questions like what do you exactly need? Which type of support? Which expertise are you looking for? Labor, networking, and why are you looking for that? Key milestone to reach? So all these type of questions that will help to address clarity on what exactly you're looking for. And this brings us to the second key guideline, the first next step. So try to finish the story strong with a clear request for the audience to take action. So what's the first next step that you need from them? And then the third and last guideline, the closing power. Try to sum up the whole story in a few words. Could be a quote, a motivational statement, even a dramatic visual to leave an impact, repeating the opening statement, and engaging on a personal level, or appeal to their professionalism and integrity. So somehow, if there is one message, one slide, one visual to remember, that's the one they need. So these are the three key guidelines with an example of questions that can help you to define the landing in a most effective way. And then based on what you are looking for, based on your story and based on your audience, you should try to identify the key questions to be raised and the key guidelines to be followed. And now, as example, let's have a look at how we apply landing to this course in business telling. And actually, the current section is our landing one, and is all about helping you to take action to build your actionable story with the key focus on the business compass, the travel map, and the power of momentum that we're going to see in the next lesson. So back to the key guidance that we shared in the previous slide. In this specific lesson, we focus on the first one, investment, and more precisely, the amount of time you need to learn business telling and to activate your audience effectively. While in the next and last lesson of this landing section, we're going to talk about the power of momentum, and we will focus on the last two key guidelines, the first next step and the closing power. Now, also in this section, your actionable story, we decide to apply a specific narrative, the metaphor. If you think about, the whole section was around the idea of making your audience travel using the compass and the map. So the narrative can be very powerful because it can help the audience to recall in a very effective way some of the key methods or tools or information you want to share with them. Now, with landing, we reach the last step of the travel map. So this is going to be the last exercise to build your actionable story. We have on the left the business compass with the 4 cardinal directions, idea, audience, teller, and content. And now let's focus on defining your actionable takeaways to call your audience to action effectively. And as we have done for the previous steps, we recommend you to use this printable canvas also to define the landing. In this canvas, you're going to find all the 6 steps of the travel map and also the key guidelines that are going to help you to bring to life the content in the most effective way. Take all the time you need to define your actionable takeaways, because at the end, they will be the final trigger for your audience to take action. And once done with landing and the whole travel map, see you at the next and final lesson of this Your Actionable Story section. Hello, and welcome to the last lesson of this Your Actionable Story section. In the previous lessons, we have seen how to build your business compass, defining the 4 cardinal directions, idea as the north, with start with why, the who, and the what. Then the audience with who, why, and the smart action needed. Then the teller with the triad, brain, heart, and body. And finally, content with purpose, markers, and a perspective. Remember to swing between your perspective and the audience one. And then we introduce the travel map, or in other words, the map that will help you to build the structure of your actionable story, with the final purpose of make your audience travel from receiver of the story to active player, ready to take the action you are looking for. So the compass and the map will be the two tools we're going to use to travel through the journey the most effective way. If you remember, any actionable story is like a journey, where the idea is where we start from, and of course, we need a final destination. So don't forget to define your SMART result, because the result are where the journey is going to end. So it's going to be fundamental to have clarity on where we want to go. Now you have everything you need to turn your story into an actionable story. But as you can see in the quote at the bottom of this slide, repetition is the mother of mastery. So to really master how to turn your stories into actionable stories, you have to practice, practice, and practice using both the compass and the travel map. Whatever your story looks like, it could be a pitch deck, a sales or a marketing presentation, a report, a speech, even an email. Business telling offers you all the tools you need to really turn that story into an actionable one. So before jumping too early into execution with a high risk to create complexity, try to apply our less is more. So to create less complexity, you need to focus on more pre-work. And with our proven, effective, and easy to use methodology, this more pre-work focus on two key tools: the business compass and the travel map. And for every content you create, keep swinging the perspective between yours and audience one. In this way, you're going to minimize the likelihood of creating too many options, too many messages, and too many stories. Because as we've seen previously, too many equal complexity. And complexity is the enemy of action. And of course, to help you in the process of bringing to life your actionable story, you can always use our business telling canvas. The one for the compass with the 4 cardinal directions. Here you have also all the key guidelines that we share in the previous lessons. And the map with the 6 steps of travel. You can find both canvas with or without guidelines at the link in the notes here below, where you can download the PDF and print it out. At this moment of the course, you have what we say momentum. You learn new tools, a new methodology. You have the interest and the excitement to turn your story into an actionable story. Or in other words, looking at the path to result, you have all that you need to maximize how to drive action and ultimately to deliver results. You are like the audience, almost at the end of the actionable story, where the willingness to take action is at the highest. And this momentum gives you all the know-how and the power that you need to activate your audience in the most effective way. To make you better understand what we mean with power of momentum, we've interviewed 100 students who have attended the business telling course. 98 of them achieved better results within 6 months after the training. The people who started practicing business telling in the first week after the training, more precisely 24 of them, deliver results 12% higher than the average of the 100 students we interviewed. While people who started practicing business telling more than 4 weeks after the training, more precisely 9 out of the 100, deliver results 10% below average. So we can conclude that practicing immediately after the training is the most effective path to result. And the reason is because you unleash the full power of momentum. Let's look at the key takeaways of this Your Actionable Story section. Number 1, we design together the business compass. Number 2, we define the travel map. And we clarify the power of momentum. And this brings us at the end of the last section. To learn how to create your actionable story, we went through We Are Our Stories, where we learn that we are today the result of our stories, because we learn, we share, and we grow through stories. Then we have seen how better stories equal better results, because if you remember, better stories drive more action, and more action deliver better results. And then we understood why learn business telling with the 4 key reasons. Maximize your business storytelling potential, minimize complexity, drive action, and deliver results. And this brought us to answer the question, what is business telling? a proven, effective, and easy to use business storytelling methodology to turn ideas into results through actionable stories. So to better understand how this methodology works, we deep dive into how business telling works, and we learn the path to result, how to unleash power of ideas, and how to create actionable stories. And then it came time to build your actionable story. And we looked together at the business compass, we understood how to apply the travel map, and last but not least, the power of momentum, the power of taking immediate action to apply business telling to turn your story into an actionable one. So, covering these 6 sections, we have officially completed the course in business telling. So, well done! Learning business telling, you learn a whole new set of tools and skills that will step change your capability to unleash the power of ideas, to create actionable stories, and most important, to activate your audience in the most effective way. But we also know that repetition is the mother of mastery. And that's the reason why we decided to include a bonus section with an extra case study. Let's practice one more time together, applying all that we have learned to the business story of a successful brand. See you at the next section. Welcome to this bonus section of the complete course in business telling. In this section, we're going to analyze together an actionable story created by a successful brand that, thanks also to this story, has become pretty successful all around the world. And the name of the brand is Airbnb. We're going to analyze together their first investor pitch. As you may be aware of, this logo is only the latest one. In this case study, you're going to see the first logo because we talk about the first investor pitch. Logo that was created in 2007, then got updated in 2008, and the final one in 2014. Now, this business story is a good example of how Airbnb has been able to turn an idea into result, making the audience, investors in this case, travel from receivers to active players. Looking back at what we learned so far in this complete course in business telling, we know that to turn ideas into results, we need actionable stories. We also know that actionable stories are like journeys, where idea is where the journey starts, result, the final destination. Audiences are the passengers or the travelers, and then tellers are the guides or the drivers or the leaders, and the content creates the landscape. And we also know that the compass and the map is what we need to travel effectively through these journeys. So we have in one side our business compass with the 4 cardinal directions, and on the other side the travel map with the 6 steps, and of course our final destination, the results. Let's have a look at the background first. It's late 2007 in San Francisco. Airbnb founders Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia just moved from New York. They bought a few airbeds and quickly put up a site called Airbed and Breakfast. Now the idea was to offer visitors a place to sleep and breakfast in the morning. Now, to fund their idea, they prepared a pitch deck with one goal in mind: to raise 12 months financing, the equivalent of $500,000, and to reach 80,000 transactions. To introduce the pitch deck, we created this 1-minute long video. Now, don't worry if you don't get every message presented in every slide. This video is just to give you an overall look and feel on what their actionable story looks like. In the notes below this video, you can also find the link to download the PDF version. Now it's up to you if you want to save it or to print it out. It's just important that you have it at hand while we're going to analyze which tools they have used from the business telling platform. So enjoy the video and see you in a minute. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the video and you successfully downloaded the PDF from the link in the notes here below. So now that you have a better overall idea of what the pitch is all about, let's take some action. Let's apply business telling. As we learn in the course, we always start by defining the business compass, and more precisely, its 4 cardinal directions. And to do that, let's use our first business telling canvas, the one related to the compass. Let me ask you a question. Where do you think we should start from? So raise your hand if you think we should start from the idea, or raise your hand if you think we should start from the audience. And one last try. Please raise your hand if you think we should start from results. So the correct answer is the result. As you can see, the result has to be placed at the top of any business telling canvas. Because as of now, every tool we're going to apply and every action we're going to take has to aim at that final destination. So in this specific case, what the two founders, Brian and Joe, were looking for was a 12-month financing, equivalent to 500,000 US dollars, to reach 80,000 transactions on Air Bed and Breakfast. Now that the final destination is clear, we can move forward and focusing on how to frame the idea. And to unleash its full potential, we begin with why the idea exists. So let's start with purpose. In 2007, at the time of their pitch, Airbnb's mission was to help create a more fulfilling accommodation booking process where people could book rooms with locals rather than hotels. The big idea was to enable people to live in a place instead of just traveling to it, and of course, giving hosts a solution to monetize their private accommodations. And then the insight. So to define the insight, let's start from the consumer truth. People love traveling and discovering new places and new cultures. And then after the truth, we have the tension. Think about it. When one needs to sleep in a new place, hotels are usually the only feasible option. But hotels are pricey and they don't really share any kind of local culture. And then we have the need. It would be great to have a simple, cheaper, and more effective way to connect with locals and to really immerse in the culture. So as you can see, defining the purpose and the insight behind the idea enables us to really frame the why in the most effective way. Let's focus now on the how to bring the idea to life. Money effective because it's a real win-win solution. Win for host, win for users, win for investors, and of course, win for Airbnb. Then simple. It's simple for host because you list once, and it's simple for users because it's very easy to use. And the last one, experience. That sense of belonging. For the simple reason that you're booking rooms with locals rather than hotels. And that community effect that Airbnb naturally creates among hosts and among users. And then once the markers are defined, let's move to the character. Rebel. Airbnb is definitely a rebel because it disrupted the existing accommodation market by challenging the status quo. The peer-to-peer approach was a radical shift, a whole new disruptive model designed to seek revolution. For a rebel, rules are made to be broken. The rebel brand archetype is an expert in developing truly radical ideas, service, and products. Sometimes rebels can be seen as revolutionary. They are the ones that must be careful about coming across as reckless, and they are endlessly shaking things up. So they are craving revenge. The rebel's greatest fear is to have no power to drive change. So, defining the markers and the character, we completed also the how. It's time now to look at the what, and to frame effectively what the idea is all about, we focus on value proposition and the market. Let's start with the value proposition. Airbnb is a community-based, two-sided online platform that facilitates the process of booking private living spaces for travelers. On the one side, it enables owners to list their space and earn rental money. On the other, it provides travelers easy access to renting private homes. And then let's look at the market, that in this case is the same for the tellers, the Airbnb founders, and for the users. So at the time of the investor deck, Airbnb key competitors were HomeAway, Vacation Rentals, TripAdvisor, Booking.com, Expedia, and all the hotels, local and international franchises. Completing the why, the how, and the what, we finalized the first cardinal direction, the idea. It's time now to look at the second one, the audience. And as we learn in the course, to define it, we should focus on the who, the why, and the smart action you need. But first things first. Let's start with the who. You frame it effectively when you drive clarity on three key steps: basics, strategic target, and prime prospect. Let's start with the basics. The tellers, Brian and Joe, needed a digital presentation to grab audience attention and to create the opportunity to schedule an in-person meeting with potential investors interested into the idea. So let's try to better understand who these investors are. Part of the strategic target are the investors interested in an innovative startup with a disruptive business model, especially because related to a very traditional market like the hotel one. And among these investors, we have to identify the prime prospect, that in this case is composed of investors interested in digital, tech, highly scalable startups based on peer-to-peer platform. So for the Airbnb founders, their audience consists of these investors. And now that we identified who they are, let's look at why would the story be relevant for them. As we learned during the course, to frame the why effectively, we should focus on why your idea or why you, why now, and what's in for the audience. Then let's start from why Airbnb. Well, because Airbnb is a promising startup that has a completely innovative and disruptive business model in a very traditional industry. And then why now? Or we should say, why in 2007? Well, because there was a new technology available and an increased demand for accommodations, especially in major cities, for big events. And so what's in for the audience? Well, they had the opportunity to invest in an innovative startup with existing traction and massive potential to grow, to reshape the whole industry. So now we know who they are and why would the story be relevant for them. So it's time now to define the smart action, the action we need to deliver the result we are looking for. In this case, the actionable story is a pitch deck. So the smart action needed by the audience was invest now to jump on board a startup that will revolutionize the hotel industry. How to be specific. If you invest X, you will have Y% equity of the startup, so an investment completely measurable. Investors have flexibility in the amount they can and they want to invest, so it's perfectly achievable. Anyone can invest whatever they can. And then looking at the revenue forecast, investing now at the current evaluation is a great opportunity, so it's realistic. And then the time-bound element. We would like to close our fundraising round within the next 3 months. Of course, we are open to close it immediately if someone will cover what we need. So defining the who in detail, then defining the why this who would be interested in the story and in the idea. And finally, the smart action we need from them and what we can offer back when they take action helped us to frame the audience in an effective way. And then after the idea and the audience, it's time to look at the third cardinal direction. It's time to define the teller. So let's focus on the triad: brain, heart, and body. Let's start with the brain. As you remember from what we learned during the course, to leverage the brain effectively, we should focus on 3 key habits. Start with the end in mind. First things first, think win-win. Let's look at the first one. Start with the end in mind. The whole deck is designed to activate the audience in an effective way. And then the second step, first things first. So the whole deck is designed to focus on simple and immediate key benefits. And then the third step, or the third habit, think win-win. Because both the business model and the funding proposition is win-win. Think for a second. Regarding the business model, hosts win, users win, and Airbnb wins because they all make money. And for the funding proposition, well, Airbnb is a high potential startup with already traction in the market, and they are looking for money, so they are offering a percentage of the equity in exchange for funds. Win for the investors and win for Airbnb. And after the brain, let's have a look at how an effective teller should leverage the heart. From the course, we learned that to leverage the heart in an effective way, we should focus on 3 key steps. Feel the feeling, define your style, and create emotional connection. Now, on Feel the Feeling, you're gonna see that the whole deck is about the excitement behind a truly disruptive, sometimes hard to understand, revolutionary idea. Hard to understand because if you know about the story of Airbnb, they were struggling quite a lot before finding the funds. And what about the style? Well, the style is pretty simple, immediate and short. So they really brought to life the concept of less is more. And on creating emotional connection, probably you got it already from the video we saw before. But I can tell you, we're gonna deep dive more, applying travel to the deck. They really wanted to make the audience feel part of this belonging. How to make every reader, every listener of the deck belonging to the purpose and the why of the idea. And then after the brain and the heart, let's focus now on how to leverage the body. In case of a pitch deck like this one, more than to fill the presentation, the body will play a crucial role when they will meet the investors in person. And in that case, to bring to life a real 3D story, tellers should use the space behind the text, the picture, the info they share on the deck. So really using the body to create this extra dimension on top of what they share to really make the whole idea and the whole story come to life. And to make sure they will leverage the body in the most effective way, they should run the 3C check. It's all about calibration, congruence, and context, keeping in mind the investor's audience. So defining the triad, brain, heart, and body, we completed also the third cardinal direction, the teller. It's time now to focus on the fourth and last one, the content. And the first golden rule when we create content is we want to move away from complexity, the too many, and moving towards less is more, because complexity is the enemy of action. Now, to make sure we reduce complexity, we're going to focus on the purpose, the key markers, and the perspective, swinging between your perspective and the audience perspective. So let's start with purpose. Every single piece of content they created to fill that presentation had one clear purpose in mind: drive investor interest behind Airbnb and get the $500,000 they needed. Then let's have a look at the markers. I think you got the feeling already watching the video. The key marker for every content they brought to life is about simplicity. So there are really few words and few images per slide. And it looks like they want to be simple, because simple is also their business model. And together with being simple is also be consistent. In all the slides, you're going to see the blue and white color, exactly like the logo. So they brought to life the visual DNA in a very continuous, consistent, and powerful way. And now regarding the third step, perspective, they really try to create a meaningful and engaging immersion into the belonging world. Because we have seen previously, it's all about belonging. And we kept in mind the strategic target they were focusing on, so the new investors interested in an innovative startup with a disruptive business model in a very traditional market like the hotel. And also the prime prospect, so the investor interested in digital, tech, and high scalable new startups based on a peer-to-peer platform. These are the definitions we have seen when we define the audience. So when you clearly define purpose, markers, and perspective, this is going to help you a lot in creating content that are going to be very effective on activating the audience. And framing content, the fourth and last cardinal direction, we completed the business compass that Airbnb has used to create its actionable story. Now that we've completed the business compass, it's time to look at the travel map, how Airbnb applied the 6 steps to turn their story into an actionable story. We're going to use the business telling canvas with the takeoff, relate, assess, visualize, execute, and landing. At the top of the canvas, we have the result. So the 12 months financing, equivalent to $500,000 to reach 80,000 transactions on Air Bed and Breakfast. Then after the results, let's remind one more time, represent the final destination of our journey. It's time to focus on the takeoff, or in other words, what Brian and Joe, the two founders of Airbnb, have used to grab the attention of the audience. Before we start, if you haven't downloaded the PDF version of the pitch deck yet, I would strongly recommend you to do it now. You can find the link in the notes here below. With the PDF, we are going to be able to follow more effectively the different steps of the travel map. Because during this exercise, we're going to group some of the slides together in one chart to make sure that we have the overview on how Brian and Joe brought to life the different steps of the travel map. But on the other hand, some of the content may result very small. So if you can look back at the printout or into another screen at the PDF of the presentation, it will be much easier to follow the content. And now it's time to jump on step 1, takeoff, how to grab the attention of the audience. The two founders start with showing their logo. And actually, the company name is pretty simple, immediate to get, and very innovative. Maybe it doesn't sound very innovative now, but in 2007, the hospitality industry was just dominated by hotels. So the concept of bed and breakfast, and even more air bed and breakfast, was something very new. So to grab the attention, tellers, Brian and Joe, decided 1, to use a claim that brings to life their point of difference, and 2, at the same time to challenge the status quo of the hotels as major players in the hospitality industry. The combination of that name, air bed and breakfast, with that claim, book rooms with locals rather than hotels, was a kind of very different, and it grabbed the attention of the audience in a very effective way. And then after the takeoff, we're going to focus on relate, how to build rapport. So if we go back to the pitch deck, for the two founders, their audiences were business investors who were familiar already with the hospitality industry. And of course, they knew the dominant role of hotels. They knew it through investment opportunities, and most of them had probably stayed at the hotels during business trips. So somehow the investors were already very familiar with the dominance of the hotel and with the issue of this industry. Now, because of this background knowledge of the investors about the industry, that claim book rooms with locals rather than hotels was already playing quite well on build rapport with them, and they believed that was powerful enough, at least for a first look at their PDF pitch deck. And then, hoping that this presentation would have brought to a real meeting, tellers decided to complete the relate while presenting in person, rather than creating a dedicated slide in this deck. We have to say, this is also due to a very self-explanatory takeoff that is already relevant for the audience. In this example, you can clearly see that it's up to you to decide when to build rapport, when is for you the most relevant moment to really relate with your audience in a significant manner. So, considering only the pitch deck at this stage, somehow the takeoff and the relate are both focused on the first slide. This is a very interesting example because when it's possible to combine the takeoff and relate together, the outcome is very powerful because it makes the opening much more compelling and memorable for the audience. So this brings us to the third step of the travel map, assess. And actually tellers decide to assess the landscape using the second slide of the pitch deck that they name problem. So they present the problems in a simple and memorable way, ordering them based on where Airbnb focused their point of difference. So recalling the business compass, the two founders were focusing a lot on the fact that Airbnb is more cost-effective than the average of the hotels, saying that price is an important concern for customers booking travel online. Second point of difference about the experience versus the hotel. And actually, they place second the problem of hotels leave you disconnected from the city and its culture. And the third point of difference that we quote when we frame the idea around the why, how, and the what to create the business compass. It was all about simplicity of use. And actually, the third problem that they place in the slide is that it doesn't exist an easy way to book a room with a local or to become a host. This is a smart way to bring to life assess, because somehow the audience would expect that the problem you use to assess the landscape is also the problem you're going to solve using your idea or your solution. So if you rank down the problems based on how relevant your point of difference are to solve them, then your idea will seem much more powerful because somehow it brings to life the concept of first things first, because it focuses first on the most important and relevant problem, leaving the last one at the end. So this example clearly shows the importance of defining your business compass before starting the travel map. Because when you have clarity on your final destination or your result, and you have defined the 4 cardinal directions, then it's going to be much easier to create content that will be able to activate your audience more effectively. And now that we have assessed the landscape, it's time to visualize a solution. Or in other words, it's time for the 4th step of the travel map, visualize. To bring the solution to life, tellers use a simple and memorable way. And they also apply a narrative, the power of 3. So let's see what they've done. The first slide of this section was the solution. Airbnb is a web platform where users can rent out their space to host travelers to save money, make money, share the culture. 3 key steps, the power of 3. Then the second slide of this section, the market validation, to prove there is a significant demand partially captured by existing competitors. And actually they quote couchsurfing.com with 660,000 users and Craigslist with 50,000 users. And then the third slide, used by the tellers to visualize the solution, is the market size to show there is a sizable opportunity. So you can see the 2 billion, that is the trips booked worldwide, and then the 560 million related to the online segment, and then the potential size of Airbnb with 84 million. So as you can see, in 3 key slides, solution, market validation, and market size, they brought to life how their idea looked like in a very simple, compelling, and actionable way. In case the font is too small to read it properly, please have a look at the PDF version. And then once describe what the idea is about, or in other words, once we visualize the solution, it's time to execute or to show how it works. So to bring to life execute, tellers used 8 slides. Let's focus on the first 4: product, business model, adoption strategy, and competition. So the product, they simply show in one chart how the product works. The business model is all about 10% commission on each transaction, as simple as that. Then the adoption strategy, how to source new users. So they show the funnel on how to gather new users from event, partnership, Craigslist, and other platforms. And the last slide, the competition. They displayed in a simple and effective way where are the competitors, what they do, and how they can play versus Airbnb. And now let's look at the second 4 slides out of the 8. So the competitive advantages, team, press, and user testimonials. So the competitive advantage, they just analyze in a very simple way the performance of Airbnb versus market and versus competitors. And then the team, the key players that are going to make Airbnb a success case study. And the press, the key press release at that time to show the traction already existing in the market. And last, but definitely not least, the user testimonials, focusing on why Airbnb is relevant for users, showing that this is not just a concept, this is a real business opportunity, because they are showing here there is already existing and proven traction. So as we said previously, once the final destination is clear and you have the business compass helping you to define your current position and how to move forward, then you're able to create content that can activate the audience much more effectively. As we said in the previous step, if you find the font too small to read and understand the content of each slide, please refer to the PDF where the slides are for sure bigger. And this brings us to the 6th and last step of the travel map, landing, or in other words, the actionable takeaways of the whole story. So let's look back at the pitch deck to understand the call to action that the tellers have chosen. So the last slide is about the financials, and the key focus, the key message of this slide is all around $500,000 to finance 12 months operation to reach the 80,000 transaction that is equivalent of $2 million on the platform Air Bed and Breakfast. As we said during the course, this is the one chart to remember. And with this chart, we completed the whole travel map. So we analyzed together the 6 steps, and for each step, we'll look at the pitch deck, understanding which content, which messages, and which slide tellers have chosen to bring to life, take off, relate, assess, visualize, execute, and landing. And to help you better understand the flow of the travel map, we look back at the video, and now we insert the different sections of travel, really understanding where they switched from one section to the other. So see you at the end of the video, where we're going to analyze the results and the key learnings of this case study. Enjoy! Welcome back. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you found helpful to see how the travel map helps you to give a structure to your story, to really turn into an actionable story. And this actionable story, together with the business compass, will provide you with everything you need to turn your ideas into results and to activate your audience in the most effective way. So let's have a look together at the result of this Airbnb first pitch deck. So raise your hand if you think that through this actionable story, they reached their final destination. They found the money they were looking for. Knowing where Airbnb is today, probably the answer is yes. And actually, by the end of 2009, they raised 600,000 US dollar, mainly from Sequoia Capital, one of the biggest startup investors in the whole world. And after reaching this final destination, they went through other journey, and they reached their result in a very successful way. For example, in November 2010, Airbnb raised 7.2 million in venture funding. And then in January 2014, Airbnb redesigned the logo, create new branding, and improve the user experience. By June 2015, the total capital raised by the company was 2.3 billion. And as of March 2020, around 300 million guests have booked and stay in Airbnb properties all around the world. Now, this is a truly phenomenal journey, and we all know that Airbnb is one of the most successful startups around the world in the last decade. So not all the startups will have the same journey, but whoever you are and whatever your idea looks like, or your brand or your project, when you master proven and effective tools to turn your story into actionable stories, the likelihood that you're going to turn your idea into result is much higher. So let's look together at the top 3 key learning from this case study. First key learning: when the map is clear and the compass is properly done, slides and content fall into place naturally. And then the second key learning: less is more. A few simple messages on each slide minimize complexity and maximize business storytelling potential. And the third and last key learning: try to share market validation and user traction to move your idea from a concept to a real business opportunity. And with this top 3 key learning, we completed the bonus section all about the Airbnb first pitch deck case study. To be honest, this key learning summary chart could be also the one slide to remember of the whole course, because at the end, when you create a clear map and the compass is properly done, and then you minimize complexity and you maximize your business storytelling potential, and you focus on showing that your idea is more than a concept, you are becoming an effective business teller. So you are simply apply business telling. And completing this last bonus section, we have completed also the course in business telling. So well done, you did it. I hope you had fun while doing it. In this course, you learn a whole new set of proven and effective tools to turn your stories into actionable stories. Because as we have seen, only through actionable stories you're going to be able to activate your audience effectively. And only when you activate your audience, you're going to turn your ideas into result. So if you want to change the quality of your result, you need to change the quality of your stories. And now you know how to do it. You know how to unleash the full power of ideas. You know how to create actionable stories. You have the path to result. You know how to maximize your business storytelling potential. You know how to minimize complexity. You know how to drive action. And of course, at the end, you're going to deliver results. So let me say, you are a brand new business teller. Now, to become even more effective, you need to unleash the power of this momentum. How to do it? Take immediate action. Try to apply everything you have learned in this complete course in business telling as soon as you can. Because, as we said during the course, repetition is the mother of mastery. And if you want to know more about business telling, please visit our website www.businesstelling.com for more info, more case studies, or to get in touch with our team. And also follow us on social media to keep learning and improving your skills and to get inspired by our new content and insight from successful actionable stories. You can find us in LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, Medium, Twitter, and Facebook. And let me close this course with one final suggestion. Out there are some people who have done it and a lot of people with opinions about it. As you can see, there are not that many people worth listening to. Now, with business telling, we want to sit there. So I can promise you, every content, every tool, every methodology we share with you is because we tried, we tested, and we make it work. So when we share with you, it's because it's proven effective. So enjoy and remember, don't just engage your audience, activate them. And thank you for choosing this complete course in business telling.